Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the January 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Housing Advisory Board, our first meeting of the new year. Welcome, everybody. We've got a really good agenda tonight and some voting items. We'll talk about that in a moment. We'll start by calling the meeting to order and having a roll call of members. Teodoro. I don't think Danny is here. Hoskin?
Here.
Ogren? Here. Hennessy? Here. Clearman?
Here.
Ramsey?
Here.
Lachazy? Here. We do have a quorum, so we'll be able to vote on things tonight, and appreciate everyone being here, especially with the cold weather. I'll be reviewing the agenda. We may be moving things around a little bit. But we'll talk about that in a moment. So item 1 is roll call. Item 2, agenda review, which we're doing now. Item 3 will be approving our minutes from the November 20th, 24 meeting. After that, we'll have an opportunity for public participation. This is the second meeting in the hybrid format with members of the public invited to attend in person as well as to comment via Zoom. You have a couple of members of the public here, delighted to see. Item 4 right now is matters from the board. I think we're going to switch that around and move our panel up to, let's see, it is currently item B under number 5. We're probably going to move that to A, assuming all of our panelists are here. And the topic on that is the practicalities of office conversion into residential, a hot topic in Boulder right now. We have a voting item after that. We'll be voting to approve or not recommendation to accept modifications to the draft ordinance on ADUs, align Boulder's policies with what's required by state law. And we'll have opportunity for public comment on that as well, and board discussion before we vote. Another item for feedback is have member quarterly update to council. This is something that member Hennessy proposed a few meetings ago that we're ready to act on. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. We'll continue to discuss listening session topics. Item 6 is matters from staff. Item 7, debrief, and then we'll attempt to adjourn by 9 p.m.
Can you predict the board appointments?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I must be looking at an older agenda. We also will be making a recommendation, or discussing recommendation to council decision point regarding upcoming board appointments. We have a board vacancy coming up in March. So with that, we can talk about approving the minutes. I think at least one of our board members would like to amend a little bit of language on that before we vote on it. Do you want to?
Yeah,
so others may as well.
So the potential listening sessions for 2025, E says that Ogren and Karen both strongly oppose having listening sessions regarding the homelessness issue. And I'd like to clarify that the reason why we're opposed to it is 1, because HAB already had a meeting focused on housing solutions, and 2, the underlying causes or factors that relate to it are being addressed by like the chamber, and there's like an upcoming TEDx. And so I feel like those are 2 reasons why I'm not supportive of having listening sessions.
I'd like to propose a provision of the language.
I propose that we modify the language to clarify why we're opposed to a listening session.
I missed what you said. I was answering the email. I
Oh,
trust that you said.
I said that I didn't want to do it for 2 reasons. 1, because we already had a HAB session on solutions, housing solutions, and 2, because the underlying issues are being addressed by other organizations like the chamber and an upcoming TEDx meeting.
That's consistent with how I feel about it.
Okay. Could I just simplifying that and perhaps just modifying it to say that you opposed getting into the logic.
But we already have that it's opposed. And if somebody reads this, I don't want them to think that we don't care about homeless issues. It's more that we've already addressed it and some of the issues are better handled by other boards.
That makes sense.
And if you want me to draft some language,
We could also just delete it. You've explained that you strongly oppose, the vote's on the record and everything's recorded. It doesn't necessarily have to be stated in the minutes, so you strongly oppose.
I defer that. I don't know that I care.
That's the easiest. I
Okay,
think that's the easiest for the purpose. of proving
great.
it.
All right, we'll just delete it. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess unless there's any more discussion on that, I could ask for a motion to approve November 20th meetings with that deletion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with that one deletion.
Is there a second? Oops, seconds.
Second.
All in favor of approving minutes with that change, say aye. Aye. Motion passes.
Danny's like, oh.
Oh my God, it's too late. Yeah, Jeff voted something. Board member Theodore has arrived and we now have a full house. Okay, we do not have all of our, or is Bill gonna come? I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, he's not. Okay.
Just, I think you got it.
We can move into item 4 then, public participation. Open comment, and we have a couple of members of the public here. Do you care to comment on housing issue? And is there anybody waiting online to comment via Zoom?
There's 3 people online.
All right, I just need to go through the rules. So give me a second to pull up the slides. All right, so just a couple rules about public participation at city meetings. So the city is engaged in the community members to co-create a vision for productive and inclusive civic conversations to support the physical and emotional safety of everybody involved. For more information, you can go to our website. The following examples are found in the Boulder Revised Code guidelines to help support the vision. These will be upheld during the meeting by our chair, Michael. We ask that all remarks and testimony be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threatening. There's something in the way. Whoops. Shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation, obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech. Behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited, and participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they're commonly known by. And we ask that you display your whole name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is allowed online. So shall we start with in person? Oh, David, you're not quite ready, are you?
I think, have you just got an email?
Observer, apparently.
I look. Let's start with online, Tiffany.
No hands are raised currently.
There is no one online. Okay.
One that wishes to speak, no hands are raised.
You do it without fear.
Okay, yeah, I'm better than nothing. You don't have the email?
I do not yet.
I went through.
Let me check, John. Hold on.
Shadow on the wall, this is not that effective. But great to see everyone. Thank you so much for your service. I'm David Adamson. I'm Goose Creek Community Land Trust. I'm working to resurrect that fine nonprofit organization, but I want to just take a few moments of your time to harken back to the great win-win solution on housing that the Boulder Back Porch Group presented to City Council in the shadow of, unfortunately, COVID in 2020. We met for 2 years. The Goose Creek Community Land Trust convened YIMBY and NIMBY folks like Leslie Durgan and Scott Holton and Alan Feinberg and Leonard Siegel. We had a great conversation for 2 years at the VIX Back Porch. That's why it's called that. And one of the things that Scott Holton came up with that everyone loved and Roger Lewis helped elaborate the Innovate for Impact housing pilot, because we feel there's so much about doing what we need to do to add density and maybe restrict cars, but people are concerned about that. And could we mobilize the community, all the beautiful, smart developers and neighbors and affordable nonprofit developers to show some examples of how we can add density, restrict cars and have it be beautiful, no covering mountain views, etc. And we have all City Council loving this idea. It's going to not require very much staff time, just like the Boulder Energy Challenge. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that we did in 2014, 2017. Anyway, since you're not too familiar with it, and it was a little while ago, and since I don't have my super persuasive slides here to show you why this is such a good idea, I'm just really making a quick pitch for anyone who wants to work with us to resurrect this idea of innovators in Boulder getting a chance with a lot of public participation to build, to design, and then best ideas could be built, could be independently evaluated, and then we can scale up the best examples of how we can really have mixed income housing in this town that responds to the climate existential crisis and our desperate need to recruit and retain great folks here in Boulder for our employers. And people will recognize, oh, I don't need to go to Europe anymore to see those beautiful medieval cities. I have this beautiful example of successful human civilization right here. So I'm just making a quick pitch. Anyone who would like to help us resurrect this idea, Danica Powell, Dave Ensign, we had the greatest folks help us put all this together back in 2020. Just COVID was a tough time to present it. So David Adamson, David at Goose Creek Community Land Trust.org, 303-545-6255. Thank you so much for your service. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm sorry, do your last name?
Adamson.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Sorry, we didn't have a picture.
email it to me in advance.
Oh, yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, we are reordering our agenda a little bit, so partly to respect the time of our panelists so they can go home a little earlier. And we have a really wonderful panel on an important topic. It's a hot topic in Boulder and other places these days. What is the potential to convert our ample amount of commercial space, which I think is tracking at about 33% these days, into housing of all kinds? It's not a slam dunk sort of proposal. There's a lot of nuance to it and challenges, but also some great potential. We have practitioners here who are going to tell us about some of their experiences. There you go, sorry. Our moderator just now. Sorry. And we also have Holly Hendrickson of the Department of Housing and Human Services, who's going to moderate our panel. And she has written a white paper that's available to everybody, kind of examining some of the realities and potentials of this subject. So I'm going to turn it over to Holly, and we'll figure out how to introduce our panelists to the public. Maybe introduce themselves, but we've scheduled about an hour to talk about the subject, and our panelists will be presenting case studies and answering questions from the board. So thank you, Holly.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I sent the PowerPoint slide so you can.
Pull it up right
Okay,
here.
thank you. All right, so I'm Holly Hendrickson. I'm with HHS. I'm a senior project manager with the housing side of Housing and Human Services. So like Michael mentioned, I did write a white paper, which you will be quizzed on later, so don't worry, time to read it. But yeah, so the goal here is just to talk about this concept of the office conversion to residential units. Do you want to advance? So I just wanted to open this up with this cartoon as kind of an entryway into this conversation. So the idea here is that COVID has kind of disrupted our use of space, especially office space. And it's been this common conversation in the city to figure out how to better use this office space and kind of maybe use this office space to respond to this ongoing affordable housing shortage. So that's kind of the background of this conversation. So I won't go into the details of the white paper because after reviewing the slides from our great panelists, I thought, you know what, these are the guys that actually know kind of the ins and outs of these details here. But I just wanted to start the conversation. Basically, one of my big takeaways of all of the white paper and kind of looking into this a little bit deeper is that I wanted to just emphasize right off the bat that I consider this concept like I consider like a market tinkering solution. Like this isn't going to shape our housing market. It's not this big solution. We're just tinkering with the market. So it's an important solution, but it's kind of this niche market. It's a small component of this big conversation here. And then just to kind of give some kind of overview and context of when it really does work, and to the panelists here and to everyone in this room, this will probably feel pretty basic, but just to get back to the basics, it's kind of the right space. Is the building that you're looking at have the high conversion for potential? Is it the right place? So is the zoning favorable, right? These are basic questions, but kind of get to the fact that like this isn't a huge, going to shape our market drastically. And then the right people, there's a level of risk that developers, anybody involved in these conversions have to be the risks that have to be tolerant to take on. And so that's a huge component here. And that leads me to our great panelists here, the risk takers in our community that actually have converted some of these, converted and are in the process of converting some of this office space to residential units. So our panel tonight, we have Pete Weber from Coburn Architecture. So you'll start us off. You have 3 examples, I think I saw.
Yes.
To dive into 3 examples to kind of get this conversation started. We have Gavin McMillan here, and you'll talk about a project that you're currently working on just at Spruce Street. So like, pretty close to here. And Phil Scholl, you'll also be contributing to that conversation, kind of like the realities of some of this project, some of these conversions. So with that, Pete, take it away.
All right, thanks. Hey, I'm Pete Weber. I'm an architect with and one of the principals at Coburn. Those of you who don't know us, we are architects, builders, and we do our own development work as well. But I'm really here to talk about sort of the design side of things and some of our experience with conversions and how that's gone and where we've seen challenges and where we've seen opportunities. So what you're looking at on the screen right now is a building. This is actually one of the original renderings from the 70s of a really cool building that I'll bet you've never noticed before. It's the Geological Society of America. And go on to the next one. This, well, first I'm gonna just go through some of the challenges in general and some of the opportunities, and then I'll walk through the 3 projects and then come back to this. But challenges, as I see them, architecture can be a challenge. You can see it's also an opportunity. But the architecture that was, when buildings are designed as office buildings, which is really what we're talking about here, they're designed with an office user in mind. They are not designed with the idea of living there. So there are some inherent challenges that are built into that. Part of it can be location. East of us here, East Boulder in general, once you get past 30th, there is a ton of square footage out there that was all designed as offices, and it's in office parks. It's in places that we don't normally think about people being. So location can actually play a big role in whether or not residential might be appropriate. Is it surrounded by the uses that we like to have associated with with residential uses. One of the big problems you have with some buildings is the floor plates. They can be very large. Office users can suffer in the middle of a building, but people don't want to live there. They'll work there, but they don't want to live there. They want to live near the edges where the windows are. So buildings that inherently have these large floor plates that were okay for offices might not work very well. It might be very difficult to try to program some of that internal space that's in these larger buildings. Circulation inefficiencies. With residential, you have different kinds of exiting requirements. Buildings that might be appropriate might be aging. And so now you're not just taking on the idea of converting something, but you're taking on all the baggage that this building has brought along with it, all the deferred maintenance. You're probably talking about all new HVAC, electrical likely needs to be redone. Elevators are probably old and don't meet current code. Placing an elevator in the middle of a building is no mean feat. It's incredibly expensive and impactful. And energy codes are very different today than they were when most of our commercial buildings, Boulder and elsewhere, were built. Egress requirements, the ability to jump out a window in the case of a fire, is very different in a residential building than it is in a commercial building, because you live there overnight, you sleep in there. And then use restrictions that Howie touched on. Sometimes uses are not allowed. And it can be that while residential might be allowed, again, is it actually really appropriate in a given location? Parking can be a challenge if you are downtown, for instance, with the existence of CAGED, the Central Area Improvement District. You do not have to provide parking for a commercial project, and you can utilize the city's parking garages. So a lot of our downtown buildings, especially in the center of town, they do not have much of any parking associated with them. Whether we like it or not, people have cars and they need some place to put them if they're going to live there. Not everybody, and hopefully fewer and fewer of us, but it's still a reality. So on the opportunity side, some of these are the same. The architecture can be beautiful. We have some beautiful old buildings that actually we want to keep. As a community, we don't want to get rid of these buildings. We don't want them vacant. We want them lively and vibrant, and they can be wonderful places to live. Location, again, it can be a challenge. It can also be a benefit, particularly in central Boulder. People want to live in central Boulder. We've got a ton of square footage there that could be converted to people living there. And some of these old buildings have really good bones. You know, they're built to last 100, 200 years. And so most commercial buildings are also built with steel and concrete. These are solid buildings. They're not built out of wood and plywood. Generally speaking, they can be really solid. And so there's a lot of good bones there that we can work with. And then parking, a little bit conversely, if we are talking about office buildings that are out east of downtown, they often have ample, if not more than they ever needed to begin with. And so they might well have more parking necessary from a residential standpoint. So I'm going to touch on a bunch of these things, and again, we come back to them at the end. So the GSA, this is a really cool building. It's this brutalist architecture from the 70s. I don't know how many of you remember Art Everett. Phil probably does. I'm not sure anybody else does, but he was a prominent architect in Boulder, one of the founders of what eventually became Oz Architecture. This is one of his early buildings, and it really is. It's a really cool building. It's heavy, it's big, it's bombastic. Not something you normally associate with residential, but as we started to get into the weeds on this, it actually lent itself fairly well with some exceptions.
Germans would probably like it that we have here.
They might, yeah. Go ahead. So this is where it is. If you know the cemetery off of where Iris turns into the diagonal and meets Foothills, the orange square there is where this building is. It's one of those parts of town that is not well understood or well known, but it is actually quite a beautiful spot. A little noisy, but other than that, it's pretty great. And it's it's a really cool building. Go one more. It has this. It's in a beautiful setting too. The folks that managed this building over the years, the Geological Society, did a great job taking care of the landscaping and the trees, and so it's a really beautiful place. And not in addition to the building being robust. I think if we were, our client on this is Boulder Housing Partners. So this will be affordable housing. And they recognized the beauty of the building and never wanted to tear it down. I don't think we've been able to if we had asked. I think that this building is eligible to be landmarked. It's really quite a beautiful piece of architecture, whether you love the style or not. It is significant. If you look at some of the detailing, it's pretty cool. So I'm going to show you the floor plans and kind of what we started with and then how we converted things, and it might help illuminate some of the challenges that we had to deal with and some of the things that make it work. So this building is pretty convoluted. It has a lot of exterior skin, which make it actually pretty friendly because we can populate that exterior skin with people's bedrooms and living rooms. It's organized around these 3 light wells, which are the yellow squares there. These are huge skylights that bring light into the core of the building. And so we didn't want to get rid of that. It's a pretty neat element of it. It takes up a lot of square footage, takes up a lot of room, and the circulation here is really gracious in the existing building. It is offices at the exterior, some ancillary or cubicle kind of stuff in the middle. And there's a lot of circulation. It's big, it's wide, and in the days of less expensive construction and a really nice budget, that was pretty cool.
When you say circulation, you mean you're talking about foot traffic? Or you're
Yes.
talking- Yeah, okay.
Yep. Moving, you look at how wide the hallways are in the middle of the building. It's really, really nicely done and gracious. Most of my developer friends would not be able to stomach that today. And so, so you can see how that all works. And if you go to the next slide, I'll be able to show what we've done with that. So we kept the light wells as I talked about. We did keep the general circulation, didn't try to rethink that entirely, but we did reduce it quite a bit. We cut the circulation about in half. It is still pretty significant, but much better than it was at one time. So that central part of the building, you can see where bathrooms are. We try to put all of those back of house kind of uses towards the center of the building, and bedrooms and living spaces out at the exterior. And it actually worked pretty well. Again, the circulation in the non-rentable square footage is high on this building. And that is, I think, something that we might see in common as buildings get converted, because you're dealing with some baggage that wasn't designed originally. The guts of it aren't for what we're trying to repurpose it for. But it worked fairly well, I think, largely because it had this convoluted and stretched out aspect to it that made the residential fit in fairly well.
And what's the 10-unit mix, like 1s and 2 bedrooms?
It's 1s and 2s, and there, I think there's a couple studios in here as well.
Okay, thank you.
It's fairly diverse. I don't think we have any three bedrooms in there.
Sorry.
And we're not making any structural changes like that. You do not want to change the structure of that building, believe me, if you have care about a budget at all. The structure needs to stay.
You explain how the light wells are accessed by the residents. It looks like they've been kind of walled off maybe, but I don't know.
They are partially, and that was to try to be more efficient with the building and utilize more of the square footage for people living rather than circulation. But they are open at least on one side. So you can see the one on the left is open entirely on the right-hand side, and the one in the middle there is open on 2 sides. So we tried to keep what
So then there's like a patio space there for, or,
it's a light well through this floor. It is just a light well that brings light down to the lower level. And on the lower level, it's kind of like a little interior court thing. I didn't include all the floor plans, but
Doors open to that court on the lower
on the
level?
lower level, there's a couple times there are, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
how big is that well?
It's about it's like 24 by 24.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty sizable.
Yeah, there'd be like any tables in there or something?
Yeah, at the lower level, yes. This level, again, is just a whole floor.
Yes.
But at the lower level, yeah. And I think that this speaks to some buildings are repetitive and you can do the same one over and over again. Some of the Reynolds buildings east of town, you look at those, they're pretty much the same thing from one to the other. There are not a lot of differences. But generally speaking, you're talking about unique buildings that have unique challenges, and they bring their own positives and negatives. And so there isn't a one size fits all to this. I think every building has unique challenges. Some of the projects we have not been able to do, which I'll talk about as well, have unique challenges that were deal stoppers at the end of the day. This one worked, they don't all work. So if you go to the next one, I want to show a couple of very different things. If you don't know who Bridge House is an organization that it's a nonprofit that tries to bring people out of homelessness. And what's unique about what they do is they provide a residential program called Ready to Work. They have a couple of other programs as well, but our work with them has been through Ready to Work. Ready to Work is a program that takes people that are clean and sober, puts them in housing, and gives them a job. And through that, people are able to get on their feet and try to reorganize their lives outside of homelessness and being housed. And they do amazing work. And what we have done with them is help provide places for them for Ready to Work, for the Ready to Work program. There's one in Boulder. It's out off Table Mesa and Moorhead. That was their original location. We did not work on that one. We were able to work on 2 subsequent ones, but they've been very successful in what they do. Their success rate is something like 70%, which is remarkable, I think. So I'll show you with how they have inhabited some buildings. If you go to the next one. This is Ready to Work Aurora. This is a really typical kind of 70s office building. These things are built for square footage, and that's about it. Put in some windows. This one happens to be brick. It is a robust building. It's made out of steel and concrete and brick. It will be around a long time if we don't screw it up. Put a good roof on it, take care of it, and it'll be around a long time. A little bit hard to inhabit. It's hard to imagine that this is going to work well for residential. We did not change the exterior of the building except for some windows so that we could get that egress component I talked about to work. We didn't have the budget for that. And our client, the Ready to Work program, I don't want to say they don't care, but their job is to put people in, give them a place to live, and ultimately give them a job and get them out of there. So their program is a year long, so folks live there for a year and try to get on their feet. So if you go to the next one, I'll start to explain some idiosyncrasies of this building. Its entrances are on the wrong side. It's got all kinds of things that I wouldn't do today, but it is what it is. Again, it's got its own baggage. You can see from the interior photograph that it's I mean, how many millions of square feet of office space do we have that looks like that? So to the next one. So this is one of those buildings that it is deep. It has a deep floor plate. It's not huge, however. So we were still able to get access to the exterior for most of the folks. It has a lot of program that is not where folks sleep. So they have day programs. They do a lot of communal things together. The upper floor of this is actually, part of it is for growth, and the other part of it is really a cafe where folks can gather and actually learn to cook, if that might be part of their vocation going forward. The bathroom components of this take up a huge amount of the square footage. This is men and women. In this case, they're separated by 2 floors. So there are fewer women than men. This is the men's floor. And it's broken down into, it's really dormitory style. So each one of these pods has 4 beds. And what a resident has is really a bed and a dresser and like a stool. I mean, it ain't much. It's like a dorm. But there's a lot of communal space. So the large footprint of this actually worked out okay because we do have a lot of communal space. And really the dorm piece of this is they are just sleeping. Maybe sit down and read, look at your phone, but there's not much to do in the residential component of this. It's like a college dorm. You just kind of sleep in there and very little else. So this was challenging, but we were able to kind of make it all work and get all the program requirements in there. And they've been up and running now in Aurora for a couple of years. And by all reports, things are working out pretty well.
So can you clarify, like, if there's a pod of 4 beds that, like, people can hear and see each other. You don't have a bed with like walls, like you have your own private walled-in room?
No,
Okay,
and that's on purpose.
Okay.
The folks that are in this stage of their world, it's safer for them to actually have some level of supervision, might be maybe the wrong word, but it's more like there's eyes on them, and they have eyes on each other, and they can support each other in that way. And someone, one of the, I think they call them guides or something. They're the folks that take care, help them. The employees can open the door and see everybody.
Okay.
And there's a security piece to that too. So no, you don't have your own entirely private room. The walls are very specifically, I think they were 4'10", I think was the height of the walls, which we've found was sort of a magic point where there's enough privacy for everybody that they're not being stared at all the time. But there's also enough like, hey man, stand up. I got to make sure you're here. Can you raise your hand? So it's very specific to this population and the way that they run their program. So it's, yeah, you're with 4 people. So my daughter, my young stars with her dorm in college, and it's her and her roommate. They're living together whether they like it or not. And it's kind of like that. So
It's pretty similar to the Boulder project.
it is. Yep. Boulder has, they have different numbers. They've got quite a variety. They got 3s and 5s and 6s. But what Ready to Work has learned is the 4 is a really great number.
Where's the Boulder project?
Yeah, Table Mesa and Moorhead.
Okay, that was an office building.
It was an office building.
Yeah, correct.
Yep.
Do you know which architects were in charge of that one?
I don't.
You know what?
Which
Yeah.
architects were in charge of that one?
Jim Young.
I don't recall.
Jim,
He was the original.
so the original was Yagi, Jim Yagi?
Yeah, you're asking who did it for Bridge House or who did the original?
Yeah, who did the renovation for Bridge House?
I don't remember. I probably had that somewhere, but I don't recall.
This is sort of a vague question. Obviously, this isn't something you would put on the free market to sell, but how expensive, comparatively was this to do for this type of project to renovate this office building like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know that I can give you a firm answer. They're a nonprofit. They get all of their funding. People who are living there aren't paying rent. So all their funding comes through grants and donations. They did not have a lot of money to spend on this, so they had to do it as inexpensively as they could. And so some of the finishes are not what you would expect at certainly a for sale level. But even a for rent level, they just couldn't, they had to be pretty down and dirty. So as a result, I think the exception to that is the bathrooms. We spent a lot of money in those bathrooms because their experience in Boulder is the bathrooms just get hammered. And so you have to have this kind of institutional level of quality to them so that they can take that level of abuse. So the bathrooms were probably more expensive than you might do for a typical residential project, but they are grouped. And then the rest of it is probably less than you would see for a typical residential conversion outside of the bathrooms. Because again, just really what can we do to make these things cheaper?
So tying into the costs of the conversion, so what was this building beforehand? What's the acquisition cost that you're looking at, generally speaking? Well, I'm assuming that's gonna dictate everything.
Yeah, I think the acquisition cost was 0.
It was, okay.
So-
So it was donated somehow, or it was,
I think the city of Aurora, if I'm not mistaken, purchased the building
okay,
and essentially donated it to, because what Aurora was trying to do, what Englewood is trying to do, they're trying to help. They're trying to find a path out.
yeah,
Not just clean up the camps, right? Like we give people an option. They're not equipped to do it as good a job sometimes as the private sector nonprofit might be. So they saw a benefit, like as a city, we will contribute this to the project. Part of the solution.
all right, absolutely.
Yeah,
I guess so.
So it's a little bit, it's 0.
The big question to me, because I think it's a wonderful concept and it's a wonderful idea, and the exigency of the circumstances certainly, I think kind of help ameliorate a lot of the concerns over location or whatever else, right? And it's like, this is being a great example. But the thing that I'm really curious about, I've represented several commercial landlords and stuff, in 30 years of practice, and sometimes they're not necessarily very sober about what their buildings are worth and stuff like that. And that's a big trigger to me. So I look at that building and it's probably limited value, and there's certainly limited value in that kind of mass office space right now. And it's a big trigger to me. So I'm just really interested in that part of it, because that's the big part of the equation, right? So if the city's got to pay, are they paying market rate? Or are they paying, hey, we just want to get our hands on it? And there's a lot of stories back and forth, like, what they've been doing in Denver with, old hotels and stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm really curious what's happening with the market, and clearly it's not what it once was. This transacted prior to us really seeing this work from home shift. So it was early days of COVID.
Okay.
And we hadn't quite gotten our arms around what the future of working is going to be. So at that, I don't know how that affected the value of the building. I think it's been vacant for quite some time. It's in a kind of a crappy location. It's got freeways on two sides of it. That probably affected the value too. I bet the owner was glad to be rid of it.
Yeah, I have a client who has a commercial, like a lab, and he's the only occupied space in the whole building right now. And they just sent him something saying, we're gonna increase the rent. So, that's
Yeah, just suggest that we get through the presentations and just ask clarifying questions. Otherwise, we'll be here all day.
Sure, I have one more to show you, and then Gavin can take over. So this is the same program, but now we're in Englewood. And this is I think these guys did siding. They were a siding contractor. And a building that had been built onto over the years, it's concrete block. It's a pretty crappy building, to be honest. But it is solid. And it's in a part of town that the community was okay with having this user group at that location. Not everybody wants ready to work living next door. But location of this and the location of the Aurora one, while it was a crappy location, it was the right location for that user group. So I'll be quick with this one because it's really a lot of the same things and same issues. Here's what it looked like, and this speaks to some of the baggage. It was a siding company, so they've got all their junk in there. They've got machinery, they've got tools, they've got materials. You see a forklift there, overhead door. The picture on the right there shows, I don't know how many different generations of electrical. But like some of these things are abandoned, some of them are not abandoned. We stopped untangling, we just said we always got to start. So that kind of stuff is real, and it has a cost associated with it. You can't just assume you're just going to go plug stuff into the same plugs and put a bathroom and a kitchen in. So next one. So this is that floor plan. It's construction drawings, so it's a lot harder to read, but it's the same concept that we were just looking at, with bathrooms in the middle and the residential components at the outside. Some of the communal spaces are also on the exterior wall because we want them to be places where folks want to go. So they've got a kitchen component that's underneath the picture there, a picture of ourselves. But otherwise, it's very similar to the previous one, where we took advantage of some of you can see the bathroom group that's up on the upper left there. We would have put that internal, but there was already plumbing there. And so it was really friendly just to plug another bathroom in at that location rather than completely relocate things. Same thing with the split between men and women, except this time it's not now on the same floor. That was a really complex issue with this floor plan to try to make that work. To keep men and women communally together, but privately apart. And then separate bathrooms and all that, of course. So I won't go into the details more. It's kind of the same program as the previous. That is under construction, about to finish, and they'll be moving in I think a couple months. The first group will get in there. So I've spent a little bit of time on this earlier. I don't know that we really need to go through this. I think I touched on a lot of these things, but you know, that the ready to work stuff is a very unique user. And I don't think that for the large part, that's what we're talking about. Michael mentioned that, you know, we should touch on that because it is a little bit unique. Most of the GSA projects probably more what we think of when we think about a residential conversion. So while we're looking at this there in this list again, the only thing I want to mention is the projects that have not worked out. We've probably 4 other ones that we've touched on that have not come to fruition. At the end of the day, every single one of them came down to cost. And the cost benefit wasn't there. It was too expensive to get what we were getting out of it. And a couple of things I'll point out that led to some of those cost challenges. One is a little bit, I thought would go the other direction. I thought that smaller buildings would be more friendly. But it turned out, at least in one case, that was not the case because so much remedial work had to be done. We needed to get an elevator in there. If we were only getting 4 units out of it. So to amortize the cost of an elevator over 4 units is a big ask. Ultimately, that and our affordable housing cash in lieu requirement became the downfall of that particular project. Along with some deferred maintenance. That building was a stucco building. It was Drive It. Phil will know what I'm talking about there. It's a stucco system that we don't use anymore. And it has all kinds of problems across the country. Not so much here because we're lucky to be dry, but they weren't going to remodel that building and keep that on there and be able to sell anything. So they could continue to rent it as office space, but if they convert it to residential and try to sell it, no one's going to buy a building to Drive It or a unit associated with a building like that. So some of that baggage was not, they weren't able to overcome. A couple of the other ones were configuration issues where we could not get to the yield that you would normally want. We could too much circulation, too much common area, too much non-residential, non-sellable, non-rentable square footage. Ceiling heights that were not acceptable in another one were part of the problem, along with some of that baggage. Another one it looked like a really great candidate. It seemed almost too good to be true. The building had windows that were on a property line and a lot of windows on the property line, which is not really allowed under the code. If your wall is on the property line, you need to fire rate that wall and you can't poke a bunch of holes in it with windows. As long as that building stayed what it was, that can stay the way that it is. We convert it to residential, can't do that anymore. Now you have to bring that aspect of the building up to code. I should mention a little more about that. When you make the conversion, when you change the use in a building, essentially it's a trigger for everything coming up to a very, very close to being up to the current code. And that trigger brings you into a lot of change that you might not have anticipated when you just think about the concept of converting to residential. So in that case, that particular wall, which was beautiful, and you can see the flat irons, and it was amazing. Well, now you can't do it. Well, now I don't want it. So just a few examples of things that didn't work. And I'll pass it on to Gavin.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Do all of our questions once they get through their presentation. So thank you.
Thanks, Pete. We'll talk about a lot of similar challenges and have our own little twist on it here as well. My name is Gavin McMillan. I'm a planner, project manager, developer of housing in town. I'm here with Phil Schultz tonight, who is founder of Denuth Construction and developer of many things in town as well. We're going to talk about older office to residential conversions and some of the land use challenges that are associated with them. And then talk about a project that Phil and I are working on in 1525 Spruce Street, which is the image in the picture there. And then sprinkle in some recommendations, maybe some ideas and thoughts we have on how we might make this type of thing, more convenient or easier to occur. Go for it, Jay. Like we've already been noted, there is a lot of office vacancy in town, and I think all of you are very well aware that we have a need for additional housing options in town. So there's this sentiment, right, that converting office to housing is an easy solution, and we're going to solve that problem pretty simply. And I do think it's a great solution, but I will take a objection to the word easy. It's just not as easy as it just seems on its face. Okay, there's been a lot of literature, a lot of white papers, other than Holly's, about this topic. It's a national conversation. You hear about it in New York City, you hear about it in San Francisco and Denver. There's an article in the Post a little while ago about the 16 top structures ready for conversion. And all that's great, but Boulder is obviously a different place, right? We don't have buildings like this with massive floor plates and 50 stories. Our buildings tend to look more like this. A lot of them. And I think Pete's right. There's a lot of stuff out east that is of a different type of building, but a lot of the stuff that Phil and I have been working on is 2 to 3 stories, adjacent to or located within residential areas. And a lot of it's like approaching the 50th year of its life, and it's ready for this new iteration of like, what is it gonna be? And so there's this great opportunity, I think, for conversion. And the reason I highlight this building is because Bill and I did actually attempt to convert it from office to residential. It's a centrally located building, has a great structure, it was elevator served, had covered parking, and we were pretty excited about working on that conversion. But I want to highlight kind of the first problem that we ran into, which I think we run into a lot, and not just with office or residential conversions, it's just in any type of change in an older building, and that is PUD zoning, which Pete sort of touched on. But is everyone sort of familiar with PUD zoning, planned unit development zoning? It's very popular in the 80s and 90s. We could essentially write your own zoning for a property. It allowed flexibility to look at height, setbacks, and things to really allow some creativity in how we develop these buildings. And there's a lot of buildings that are built like this in town. And those PUDs run with the property. So all that is great until you want to come in, 40, 50 years later and make a change to that building. And in Boulder, we go through a process to amend the PUD, which takes time and process. And inevitably, there's non-conformities. You either have an existing building that does not conform to the underlying zoning, or if you're going to remodel the building, you are now not conforming with the PUD. So you're stuck in this process that can be a little bit uncertain as to what will come up, and it can take some time. And in this case, I won't get into the weeds, we're well into the weeds. We actually would have had to amend the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan land use map to ultimately make this conversion. And it was going to be a 2-year process and an uncertain outcome, and decided to walk away from that process, which was really hard to do. So my first, I think, sort of tidbit is, I think there's some work to be done on how we address these PUDs in town moving forward, and how we either decide, to abandon them or just make conversion from them to the current zoning a little easier. And there's probably some work that, this board could lend to that conversation. And I will just say, I know Jed is way easier said than done, but I think it's worth discussing. So undeterred, Phil and I moved on, and then mostly this is Phil's doing. This is 1525 Spruce Street. This building was built in 1984, and maybe we didn't learn our lessons because it also has PUD zoning. And there's some other complexities here too, though. The eastern half of this building, which is like kind of the purple blue building, is 10 residential condos, and then the central part is like a kind of an entry corridor or an atrium. And then the western half is 7 office condos, and it's been that way forever. That's how the initial PUD set it up. And there is a common HOA that manages the whole thing on behalf of the office and on behalf of the residents. And I'll get to why that's interesting in just a moment. Go ahead, Jay, thanks. We are just looking to convert the western half of this building to a residential. We're going to fill in the atrium there, which is now just void vaulted space with some floor area. And ultimately end up with 6 residential condominiums for sale. The biggest challenges we've come across the PUD amendment process, although I think everyone was well intentioned, it just takes time. And we also had to get sign off from all of the owners of those residential condos, which was 10 individuals, on our plan to amend that PUD because they all had an ownership stake in that. So wrangling all that, which was Phil's task, and it was amazing. He was able to do it. He did a great job of just kind of talking everyone through the process. But these are the kind of things with these conversions and neighbors and the types of conversations that come up that make this process difficult and time consuming. And then the second thing I'll note is that we had to, in filling in this atrium, one of the requirements is that we could not have a net gain in the floor area in the entire project. So we ended up having to chisel out balconies from the facade and the skin of this building to sort of delete some of that square footage. So
Why do you have to do that?
because we could not, we were bound by the PUD, I believe, in terms of how many square feet we could have developed there. So when we filled in that atrium, we were essentially adding floor area. And so per the zoning, we had to then delete floor area somewhere else to keep that floor area as basically what it was originally approved for.
So the balconies intrude on the interior space rather than extending it.
That's right.
And they're more expensive because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably more importantly, yeah, the square footage loss is of course hard, but you know, one of the benefits of these buildings is you like to think, oh, we can just kind of reconfigure the outside, but you end up getting into modifying the skin of the buildings and the roof, and you lose a lot of that cost efficiency that you perhaps hope to gain. So time, uncertainty, cost, we're, I don't know, Phil, maybe 2 years into this process, all in right now. Yeah.
And we don't have a building permit yet.
And we do not have
The photo shows a dark rectangle.
I was just trying to that's not part of
That's the western side is the brick where the 6 condos are.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that is
then-
our
But
scale.
your objective with this project is to sell these spaces for money to people who want to buy something, right?
If you go to the next slide, I think you'll see the rendering of what we're attempting to do here. So we'll be modifying the facade of the office building to end up looking something like this. We're in for a building permit. We hope to be under construction in the first half of this year. And I think, well, I'll segue to Phil here. There is this assumption, I think, that these conversions are going to be less expensive than new buildings and new construction. And in our experience, I think they're just not really that much less expensive for a lot of different reasons. And I'll let Phil maybe take it from here and kind of highlight some of those things and some other challenges that we face.
Thanks, Kevin. We'll try not to restate what Peter and Gavin have done so well. A lot of my expertise here is probably about what these things cost to do, because I work in the marketplace as a developer. My company, Danu, has built every kind of building and a lot of commercial, and now almost 90% of our pretty large volume is in affordable housing. So I have a really big database of costs in all kinds of structures. A lot of them are readaptive uses, you know, whether it was Larimer, whether it was Union Station, whether it was, Lowry, whatever. So, and we've done permanently supported housing, we've done 200 unit apartment buildings, and we've done smaller kinds of co-housing stuff. So, but full disclosure, as a developer, I only do stuff for sale at the higher end. I'm sure this group is probably more concerned about the missing middle or affordable stuff. And that takes you into a different niche, particularly in terms of financing. So if you assume that you're going to be doing for rent product and that it's going to be affordable, that puts you in a certain place. I will say, as a contractor who builds a whole lot of affordable housing, it isn't affordable to build at all. It's the same cost. In fact, the agencies that do this kind of housing are now leaning into making much more sustainable, much more environmentally friendly, and much more. I mean, we're doing net zero. We're doing all electric apartments and regulars. So that's a different game and a different cost basis. So if you ask me what something costs to do one of these office conversions, I'd say, well, it depends. And the range will be huge. And I think you could probably apply that in general to almost any kind of conversion. Office is an easy topic to talk about right now because the vacancy is pretty apparent. We've had empty warehouses in Lodo for 40 years before we turn it into this vibrant mixed use kind of gritty guerrilla neighborhood with a lot of residences in it, a lot. So the cost thing that I look at these, and I would say any developer needs to do this. One of the things I count on, and our clients count on, is doing a lot of pre-construction service to try and figure out with the architect where it's going to end up. And so you've got to have some pretty good database for that. And all kinds of construction. As Pete says, these buildings are office buildings are generally pretty durable, pretty salvageable structures, but depending on their age and whether they were built like the one in Aurora you were talking about, which was just a box with some band windows on it, you're not going to be easily converting that to something that feels residential, has some appeal, even in the rental market or in the middle range of rents. So that building there, the embedded value of that building is in the land, has nothing to do with the building. The cost of demolishing what we're doing there and reskinning, new fenestration, new elevator, new HVAC, new landscaping was dictated, will easily offset the value of what structure is going to be left when we're done. I was pretty sure we could save the roof. I think you have to assume roofs are going to change or be so penetrated by new HVAC and new plumbing that you might as well plan on a new roof. So it's about the same cost as new construction. So depending on your buy-in cost, which you were referring to, what is the basis of the building? If you're a commercial owner, first of all, a lot of commercial owners don't want to be in the residence. So they either have to figure out how to sell their building, and I'm sure on their balance sheet it's overstated in the market right now. So that's an issue that they've got to come to grips with. But let's just say that you can acquire a property that's something like, in your mind, a reasonable cost, hopefully with some value add. You can add square footage, you can take it to the next level in terms of the marketplace, or you can get a much greater density out of the smaller units. When we do this kind of stuff in the higher end, I'm building a 2,000 or 2,500 square foot condominium. Most rental apartments are going to be half that. So all those things start to drive the program that the client sets up is going to dictate a lot of what you're going to try and pull off. How many corners you're going to cut, how many things you're going to try and salvage. And I would say that the marketing of these buildings is not that hard. I would say if you're in the game, the financing is not going to be that hard, but the land use process can be a killer. And one of the things we do in Boulder, I don't know if all communities do this, but we're advised to go through what they call a pre-application process. Go ahead and write your 10 or 12 questions about the property. This is before you put it under contract if you want. And then the staff will give you 3 weeks they'll answer those questions. I have found those largely to be not very effective. I don't think it's because the staff is incompetent. I just don't think they can take the time to do as much research as they need to do. So that thing that we were talking about on North Broadway, we were into that, 4 or 5 months before it came up through the city attorney's office that the underlying land use designations were not compatible. And it was a non-starter. It would have had to go to 4-body review, including Boulder County and Boulder Planning Commission. So it just wasn't going to make any sense for 4 units in that building. So you got to early on set some parameters that you can accept. and build in large contingencies and assume that things you like about the building, you might like the entryway. We had a perfectly good plaza on this thing. City made us change it because it was too commercial. So, it was hard to argue. Things like that come up and they're just, headbangers. Most of us in the development business have more than our share of those things and we get through them and it's part of the game. But if, as Pete says, you get to a point where it just doesn't pencil and you've already spent 5 months on it and $50,000, then it's pretty frustrating. I really hope, and I think it would take some more work to talk about what kind of exemptions for affordable housing. I mean, I think somebody here, part of the minutes, suggested if it was 100% affordable, skip the site review. Site review is a 6 to 8 month process at least. So, somehow to get, I don't think we'll ever have by right in this town, but somehow something between by right and site review has got to exist. It just has to. On these things that are important to the community to bring forth, whether it's in really supportive housing or like Bridge House is doing. I mean, those are necessary kinds of things, but those are going to be underwritten by the community, just like Aurora bought that building and donated. Just like a university is going to buy the movie theater in Louisville and make it student housing. I mean, those kinds of things are one-offs, not one-offs so much as not what we're talking about. I think so. I'll let it open to questions, but I echo Gavin's sentiment that it has proven hard, and I don't think it has to be. There'll always be challenges. I think good designers like Peter can solve them in terms of getting density and figuring out how to put windows into places and still maintain architectural integrity. That Art Everett's building should be left intact if you can, So it's a challenge to balance all that out, but I just think you can't go into it with Pollyanna. You just can't believe that it's going to be as easy as it might appear.
I have a question. Given that the Boulder Valley Comp Plan is in the process of being revisited or revised, are there edits or suggestions that you would recommend that would make the process easier, less cumbersome?
Phil just touched on one, which is there are a number of places in town where the underlying, the way the whole thing works might be, it's a little tricky, but if the land use designation in the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan says A, and you want to do B, even though the city's code might give you a mechanism for that, the comp plan still needs to be changed. And that just takes a ton of time. So to the extent, to answer your question, during the update that we're doing now, to the extent that changes can be made in parts of town where it would be sensible to have more housing and the underlying land use designation does not allow it, does not align with that, realigning that would make a lot of sense.
So that's just updating the tables, the land use tables is what is
It's the map, which really is, yeah, it's a separate from the city zoning map is the county land use map. And different but similar kind of designations. In some cases, they don't align. And so that's minimum. That
situation have been non-conforming for years.
Yeah.
And the city doesn't do anything about identifying those kinds of conflicts. And because they do take time, just putting them in motion, move through that and try to get things to register. And we said to the city attorney, I mean, come on, wave your hand here, make this go away. You know you want it. You know it's not right, fix it. And it was like, there's a process for this.
Is there an amendment that would incorporate the challenges you have with PUD? Like, could that be incorporated into the Boulder Valley Comp Plan?
I don't know
as
if that's
well?
a comp plan thing. That's a
not a council.
pretty technical issue.
Okay.
And it's something that I don't think we really speak to at all currently in the land use code, other than if you have a PUD, you need to amend it to do these types of things. So I suppose the comp plan could say, hey, we should look to move on from the PUD question in a broad statement, but it's a really technical, nuanced code change that would need to happen, I think.
And I believe PUDs are also state law. has some play there in terms of what you can and can't do with regard to PUD. And that's about as much as I know about it. The land use attorney might be able to help more with that, but I think there is some state law might have some issues for us around what we can and can't do with the PUD. But one thing I think, at one time from city staff, I got to read that you needed 100% of owners in a PUD in order to make a change. Then I got
They basically have a veto.
Then I got a reading that said, no, what you need is actually permission of the, which would not, which is not the same thing. And then we have been successful in actually modifying UDs without explicit permission from everybody in the PUD. So it's a little bit all over the place, and I don't know what kind of change might be possible there.
So I was at the Summit County Attorney's Office when we litigated this issue, and the case is Watley versus BOCC. If you're making a modification to PUD, only the property that's directly affected needs to sign off. So if you have everybody on the PUD, they don't have veto power. We do this whole thing. So that's absolutely the case. There's no veto power. That's a big thing. And I just want to say what I really appreciate, and from all the different perspectives, and you guys coming here and talking about this, and I appreciate what you're trying to do too, because to me, and I'll just say, like, I see everybody talking about, going to war with the FAA, take over the airport, but there's all these bones here that can make a lot of sense. And really what I heard from all three of you from a different capacity, even when you're talking about the Ready to Work program, is the regulatory obstacles to making something pragmatically effective that can really work, the whole thing with the windows and stuff like that. And I understand fire code. I've been a land use attorney for 30 years. So PUDs can, you just work in Summit County that still have done a ton of affordable housing, and we use the PUD as a mechanism to get that done because it is flexible zoning. That's the whole notion of it. And the PUD modification can be great. We've done it in Keystone in multiple locations, Copper Mountain, et cetera. And it just really underscores that whole notion. And what I heard from all three is that if particularly, you could have a sliding scale. If it's market rate, okay, then you got to swim in the, in the choppy waters with the sharks and the, piranhas. But as you're getting down the line and you start thinking about something that's more, what you said, I've said it 100 times. Nobody gives you a discount on PVC, on concrete, on anything just because it's affordable. So what can you do? There's two things that we all do. Three: land dedication, subsidy of some sort, right? That's what a city of Aurora is, and then regulatory facilitation, right? And that's one that we keep coming down to, that we've had a lot of conversations here. And so I think you guys bringing it up to me, and we've been talking about it. I have 2 months left. I've been here 7 years. We've been talking about it for 7 years. The whole notion, whether it's an ADU, whether it's a tiny home, et cetera, the whole notion that one of the things that we can do is loosen up the regulatory process, and as well as some of the constrictions of the regulations to make these things happen if you really want to see affordable housing. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I think that you should get a lot more assistance from the city. You should get a lot more assistance from everybody. If you're going to talk the talk, walk the walk, and that means that you have to let go of your regulatory control, and you need to be more creative in terms of that. You need to let go of process, which is really hard for most government entities to do. I spent 12 and a half years as a government attorney, so I understand that, right? And the part that you talked about too, because I've had this myself, where you go in, do a pre-submittal, everything's great, but it's still got to go through. It's like, it's like buying a car, and the finance manager or the office manager in the back, you think you're gonna come with keys, and they're like, well, you're gonna have to get the undercoating, right? And so we finally got a call back from the city attorney. Those are the things that I think need to be fixed, and I think the message that I heard from all of you really resonates as far as that goes, in terms of if there's going to be a solution, that's what it's going to be. And then we can take all these spaces that are there that can be useful, right? And some of them, maybe it's useful, like that siding place looked pretty janky, right? But it can be useful for that kind of housing, which is serving a huge need right now, where there's not a lot of money for it, and there's not a lot of opportunity. And so the answer on every single one of those is what can we do to make it easier so that, you know, when you're getting into it, you're like, I'm not gonna do the 2-year Russian roulette and then get a no at the end of the day. That to me is the answer. So that's all I have to say, but I appreciate, you know, you guys coming here and talking about it because it is an absolutely huge issue, I think now. Exactly what we should be talking about here all the time.
Question for you guys. Are you familiar with the City of Boulder's construction use tax? And if the city wanted to encourage development of currently commercial spaces into residential and elected to waive the construction use tax for those projects, would that incentivize development on your end?
It certainly would. I mean, it's just, it comes down to the dollars at the end of the day. And if the less you can spend, the more likely a project is able to happen. So certainly that would help.
I think the finance director would laugh in your face if you said, give up the use tax on any of these things. That said, there's other fees that we pay. These commercial buildings in their lifetime have paid a lot of property tax, 4 times what the residences do. They've also paid, depending on their age, some amount of excise taxes, but not the same thing we do for residences, you know, parks, rec, transportation, all of those. But if you waive some of those fees for the readaptive use of this building, it's still going to pay property tax. And again, the city doesn't get a lot of property tax. County gets quite a bit of it. But still, there's a way that it's more than a gesture. Those are real dollars that add on to the cost of these things. And if you are developing new residential, if they could waive the cash in lieu, if none of it was affordable, that would matter as well. So all those things really pile on. And I don't think use tax would be one of the things they would easily give up on. I mean, it's kind of sacred. But the other fees, I can't see why for a building that's already been hooked onto the system and using sewer and paying bills and everything for 30 to 40 years, shouldn't be given some credit.
Yeah, when office buildings are developed too, they pay a commercial linkage fee for housing, which is a pretty big fee. So you could say, in theory, if you're going to take a commercial structure and convert it to residential, and by the way, then pay inclusionary housing on the residential portion, which is part of current policy, that perhaps there should be a credit for removing the commercial structure, which paid a linkage fee to begin with. That's the kind of thing. Those numbers definitely will move the needle on whether these types of things happen.
Because I'm mindful that, you know, red tape to development is a feature of Boulder, Colorado that also makes our real estate so expensive and desirable. This is not Houston, Texas. I'm sure it's a lot easier to get things built there, but people pay more to live here because it's beautiful, and culturally and politically, people want to kind of have their hands involved in everything developers do. But I do wonder if there's ways that we can create a financial incentive. And I'm also mindful, I mean, I haven't done an economic study on tax use here, but if we have an empty office building that's still paying property tax and people then move into it, those are bodies that are then going around to all the restaurants and generating a lot of sales tax revenue for the city. So while you might lose tax revenue in one spot, bringing people in, increasing the population, increasing spending generates revenue elsewhere. So it could be a net wash. Granted, I haven't done a study on all this, and it's a hard thing to predict. But if our city council decides this should be a priority for the city of Boulder, I think maybe one thing we should be mindful of is how can we at the very least reduce costs to encourage this specific type of development. And construction use tax seems like low hanging fruit to me is one thing to do. I don't know if you guys have a list of, I'm sure you could put together a list of things you'd want waived. But you know, that's a policy decision for the city. How much do we want to encourage this type of development?
We'll start slashing taxes here. I just want to be mindful that we're about an hour in, so.
And do you have another question?
I don't have, well, I have lots of questions, but I want to make
I
sure.
wanted to
that-
drill down a little bit before we go on to the next section. This has been so interesting. But, you know, this is primarily we are a policy oriented board. And I'd love to hear, and I agree with everything that Chip said, there could be financial incentives and other carrots. But I think our greatest role would be to make some policy recommendations to council that could simplify, speed up. You've already mentioned a few things, but maybe kind of a lightning round of like, what would you ask us to ask council to change if you, now's your chance to do it. So, and things like, you know, removing site review for 100% affordable, is, I think, a great example of where we might go with some of our recommendations. Anything particular comes to mind, Pete?
Well, just one thing I'll mention on the city fee and tax side of things. I heard a very cynical point of view that I gotta say, I thought had some legs, which is that it is not the city's responsibility to solve this problem and receive less income because of it. The city has all kinds of priorities to do with all of those monies they receive. And it goes to all kinds of things that we all love, right? It fixes our roads sometimes. It takes care of our parks sometimes. But those monies go to things we all love and want in our city. So to reduce them in some way means that either things don't happen or that money has to come from somewhere else. And further, take this cynical thing one step further, what really the city should not be responsible for bolstering property value by subsidizing this kind of thing. The property value is that eventually a commercial property gets cheap enough that Phil can make it work. And that's a real burden for the owner of that. And it's not the city's responsibility to bolster the value of that property. It's the owner's problem, not the city's problem. So that's a really cynical point of view. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to approach the incentives to try to make this thing happen from the city's standpoint. But I think maybe to Phil's point about the use tax, there's some sacred cows that just, you can't get blood from a turnip, you know?
And the only counterpoint I give that, Peter, is that if we let buildings and building owners fend for themselves and there is no market for their product, we're gonna end up with empty buildings that become abandoned. And
Yeah.
that leads to a kind of blight, maybe not ugly blight, but still, it's not vibrant.
It's also economic waste, you know, like I said, if we have an empty office building, sure, like no subsidies, all that, but if we have people moving in there, that grows the economy, that results in sales tax revenue elsewhere.
The other thing we already touched on a lot of this, but if the regulatory environment and the level of review that the city requires, I work with developers really from all over the country on stuff. And as soon as they know a project is bolder, they roll their eyes and either add a big number to their thinking or they run for the hills. Like it's just, if we have a well-earned reputation for being a very expensive place to do business from a development standpoint. And a lot of that time is money. So the 2 years to fuss around with something, that isn't just time, there's money associated with that time. And so anything that can be, and this is where it doesn't cost anything, right? This doesn't cost the city anything to remove some of the regulatory barriers. So I think the things we've already touched on, anything that can speed the process for us is going to be helpful.
I don't think there's a fair appreciation of the time value of time, you know, in the duration of review. And I've been inside the beast long enough that I know there's days where my project was sat on somebody's desk and was not being reviewed, was not being handled in any way whatsoever. So do I want my own Doge? Maybe not.
Available.
But I think there's a way to cut some fat in this thing and to cut some leaks out of things. Our building on Spruce has been empty since June because that's when we programmed that we would have our permits. And delays throughout the process extended that till now March. So 9 months of carrying the building, paying taxes, paying utilities, paying insurance. It's not gonna screw the project totally. It just diminishes and makes it less fun. You know, so and I don't think it had to happen. So whatever that tool is, to just be sensitive to the fact that when something is not being reviewed, or if there's what I'll call obstructions, I don't believe any of the people in the staff think what they're doing is obstructive. I'm sure they don't, but it is. And it costs a lot of money, and it makes some projects less viable.
I'll just be two specific things. I think, as I mentioned, some way to streamline this PUD amendment process, or I don't know, wholesale sort of say that the PUDs can go away. Again, I know that is way easier said than done, but they do cause a lot of trouble. And then second, I do think the commercial linkage fee, if you want to look at a specific one line item, if you are redeveloping a commercial building into a residential building, that there should be some credit applied for that commercial building being converted into housing. And I think that would help. And then I just want to say too, like a lot of the things that, like, this is not a session for us just to bash on the city. I think some great things have happened over the last couple of years with the zoning code. And I know Jay has been working on a lot of that stuff. So I do think we're making some changes. There was some pretty Byzantine regulations with the zoning code that have been changed recently to allow more density, do more things. So there is like some proactive energy in that direction. And so I want to say, good job. And I just think we'll take it a step further, because we still get bogged down in process sometimes. But there have been some great things happen.
You know, that's fair. That building on Spruce would not have happened if
True.
there not been a zoning change
Yeah.
in the process, in
Right.
the middle of the process. And they said, if you'll wait 3 months till January 1st.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were great to work with in that regard. We found a solution there. I think maybe there wasn't one, so.
One last thing about the PUD thing, there is an amazing amount of property in this town that is governed by a PUD. It's not these little one-offs things like that
Yeah.
building on Broadway. It is an amazing amount of land that actually is under PUD. All of Wonderland Hills, for instance, is a PUD, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. Not a lot of office over there, but it's an amazing amount of property. A lot of the office parks out east were done under PUDs. So it's not a small issue.
No.
70s and 80s thing.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question, maybe it's a wrap, but is this an area that has enough potential that it's really worth the city putting time into it, or is it so niche that, you know, we might have bigger fish to fry?
I think what would ever help this particular segment of development would help all segments of development. So it's worth doing. And if its immediate application is on these kinds of buildings, so much the better. But all these problems are not specific to converting office buildings. That seems to be a current opportunity, but the problems are generic.
I think we have some other questions from the board. Or a wrap?
I usually have questions, don't I? But I guess the thing that I come away with is, like, you've made some great suggestions there. They feel a little hand wavy in the sense that I wouldn't know how to leave this room and go write them down in a way that I would feel good about. I know you're making notes too, but it feels like there needs to be a couple rounds of iteration and maybe a working group that puts together some meaty recommendations rather than just sort of like, hey, wouldn't it be nice in this general direction, you know, but actually make specific recommendations. So the linkage fee is really interesting to me. It seems like a kind of obvious, like symmetry. It feels like right to like do a reverse, you know.
That linkage fee, I'll say, is relatively new.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not probably a ton of square footage that falls in that actually paid that linkage fee.
Yeah. The big takeaway I have from you guys is, you know, turning an office building into marketable residential real estate that someone buys with their own money is a pretty difficult cost endeavor. Maybe there's certain situations where it works, but otherwise there's a lot of costs involved. But I also get the sense doing this bridge house type work, you know, taking an office and making it a habitable space for someone who is not paying money to live there. Maybe they don't care if they have a nice living room or a balcony. That's probably more manageable.
And, you know, I think one thing we've been looking at is solutions for homeless problems in Boulder, and whether, you know, obviously there need to be government involvement for this because these are not paying clientele, but if that's a feasible endeavor to transition office space to like transitional housing for homeless people. And I get the gut instinct that perhaps that might be a more feasible thing to do just from a development perspective than turning it into a, you know, a marketable condo that you'll sell for $600,000 or $700,000.
Good point. Capacity issue too. Somebody's got to do it. Not gonna happen. Bridge house is probably pretty maxed out, so who else could take on projects like that? It's not a question to be answered, just point that out.
Can the public make a comment?
No,
Sorry, David.
No, sorry.
I sent it to you, maybe you can forward.
Well, I think we can wrap now. Thank you so much to the panel and Holly for being here and sharing so many wonderful examples and being realistic about it. But I agree that it's worth investigating. I like Philip's suggestion that we might have a working group that could perhaps take some of the notes we've brought away today and write them down for a resolution to be considered at one of our next very soon meetings. It's a pretty good note. I'd be happy to work with one of the board member on that, since we can't have more than 2 meet.
Just as a quick follow-up to that suggestion, for instance, on the PUDs, which is something we've all mentioned, all 3 of us are aware of it. If you said just that, just one sentence to the city, they would know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
They would know what you're talking about. It's been brought up for a decade.
Yeah.
It's a problem. They have hundreds of histories where it was a problem. So
And
they
it's
just
a
can't
problem
see.
for the city too. I mean,
It
they
is a
don't
problem
like
for the
it.
city. They would love to change it. It's just a big deal.
Okay, so fixed PUDs is a really easy recommendation.
Easy recommendation.
One other quick thing, Michael, I think I mentioned this to you the other day, but the chamber is also studying this. And
That's right.
and so you might think about at least touching base with them.
We have touched base with them.
Okay, but more about
I
group
think
approach.
there is one other thing happening with Bloomberg, I think, to study this issue. Holly, you know more about
I thought
that.
that was missing.
Yeah, it's with Bloomberg, and it's more to study the middle income / missing middle piece, which may include this office conversion. It's kind of anything's on the table for that.
But I think, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I think you were about to launch into that last time we talked. Is there any updates that you can report out on?
Nope, we're just getting started. There's a handful of city staff that are on a Bloomberg City Leadership Initiative program to dive into the issue of middle income housing within the city. And the idea is that we convene as a small group and do some level of community engagement to come up with like really, big or small ideas that push the envelope on this issue. We haven't pushed the envelope yet. We just got started.
It's there, but pushed.
We have started, and within it's like, 6 months long, I think. So we'll be this summer and coming out with some recommendations or some ideas.
Isn't the idea to get different communities to share
Yeah,
their thoughts, their innovations?
it's really to like be innovative in the truest sense, like really trying to find some ideas that haven't been tested here or anywhere else, really. We'll see what we come up with.
Great. Well, let's have a hand for our panel. Great job.
Have some more food.
Emma is on the call. She'd like to speak.
I'm sorry.
Emma Robles, our PNDS liaison.
I'm sorry, who's on the call?
ML Robles.
ML.
ML from the.
Oh, ML, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. And ML has a question?
Yes, good evening. Thank you. Michael, I'm not sure if you would like me to weigh in on this conversation or not. If you do, I do have a couple of thoughts.
I think that's fine. ML is on planning board and is our liaison.
Yeah.
So
Fire away.
Great. Excellent conversation. I appreciate the perspectives that were brought. The I think there are two salient points that I think are on the table that could be advanced. One is we are updating the zoning to allow residential in more zoning areas. That's underway, that's happening. I think one of the panelists recognized that changes there. And the BVC update is intended to loosen a lot of the complexity that you see now between land use versus zoning. So all of that is on the radar as we try to accommodate more opportunities for residential in areas that historically have not been earmarked for residential. I think the conversation about reducing the oversight, i.e. site review process. We did just recently exempt 100% affordable housing projects from site review liabilities or responsibilities. So these thoughts are on the radar. The conversation we've had on planning board many times relative to how do we loosen site review requirements is what value does site review bring to the community? And the conversations have been very interesting we think we get better buildings as a result of site review. So that particular administrative public input, what could look like a burden, is actually yielding community benefit. So that is a conversation that has happened and I'm sure will continue to happen. I appreciate y'all bringing it up. The piece that hasn't been talked about at all here in the reuse of existing buildings is the carbon footprint. That is a big added value in the conversation about why would we reuse a building. I heard you talk about the economics, build new building, reuse a building. The economics really aren't the driver for reusing a building, but there might be these other factors, which are environmental factors. And I think we have updated our energy code to begin to identify carbon footprint as a factor. Our city has always had carbon reduction goals. So I think that is a piece that isn't on the table and maybe should be on the table in the conversation. So anyway, those were my two thoughts. I really appreciate the conversation and the questions and the dialogue that has happened here. Thank you.
Follow up on that comment.
I'd like to follow up on the carbon footprint, just very briefly. One of the big things that you need to assess in looking at one of these buildings, they're probably all gas fired. And then our all electric future, upsizing the electrical service to the building is a pretty big deal. I mean, it's a big ticket and it's very likely going to happen, which means starting over with the meter stack and the distribution panels and everything else, all the heavy stuff. So I'm not fighting that future. I'm saying it's, unless you have enough power coming into the building, not going to apply to water and other things too. That assessment has to be done very early on, so that you're not wrong about it. Presenting it, whatever's there, but serving a building full of people won't necessarily work for residential.
I guess embodied carbon is the factor that comes into play when you're reusing an existing building. I hear what you're saying about the future and how we get to a carbon neutral building with building use, but the carbon that's already existing and being sequestered in the existing building, that is historically a factor in, around the world for reuse. It's one of the ones is the material is already there, and it is can potentially continue to serve a useful purpose rather than becoming part of a destructed and carbon release process. So it's more embodied carbon. Sorry, used the wrong terminology. Carbon is corrected, just in what state?
Well, I'm glad you brought it up because talking about helping the environment is a good way to get people to pay attention in Boulder and make policy
Yeah.
changes.
Well, I wonder if there could be some kind of credit around that. You know, there is in things like lead and so on, you get credit for that embodied carbon aspect. But is there something we can do from a regulatory standpoint that somehow is tied to that? If you get somehow get credit, that could lead to better outcomes for that. But it's a good point, ML. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we can thank our panel one more time and move on to our next.
Thank you very much.
We are back to item 5 on the agenda. It used to be item A. It's an important one. It's something we'll be voting on to make a recommendation. And that is occupancy and ADU changes required by state law. We do not have a staff presentation on this. We will brief through a memo attached to the agenda. And the question perhaps is pretty simple. Does the Housing Advisory Board recommend any modifications to the draft ordinance? With that, we have 3 components. We'll have board questions first. We'll have another opportunity for public comment on this issue with the same 3-minute format, and then we'll have board discussion and a decision. So I'll open it up to board members for questions about occupancy and ADU changes required by state law.
And this is just to conform the local ordinance to state law, which already controls.
Well, this is one of the ways the state law gets rolled out and implemented.
Yeah.
It's important.
I sort of feel like we don't have a choice. Do we have a choice?
You have a choice whether or not you want to make a recommendation.
We wouldn't be rejecting the state law if we.
Yeah, where a local law conflicts with state law, typically state law controls unless the
Right.
Constitution or something is on a higher level of law, so.
I mean, I think this is all brave new world, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a rubber stamp to something that's inevitable, but. I don't know, I'm not gonna oppose it, or it's just, what are we voting on to like make a recommendation? or-
Just to recommend to council that they do we have any recommendations for modifications to the draft ordinance, which you sent previously meeting for review? We could say no, but you.
This is what we reviewed last time, right? Or recently.
Well, also you got a copy of it.
Yeah, I know, but we're not getting a presentation because we already have.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, we reviewed this extensively.
The memo has a suggested motion. If you do want to go that route, I can read it to you.
Should we do the public comment first?
I just want to make sure you know here.
Okay, sure, let's read it.
So Housing Advisory Board recommends that City Council adopt ordinance 8650, amending Title 9 Land Use Code and Title 10 structures to amend the standards for accessory dwelling units, setting forth related details. So pretty simple. Like I said, you don't have to do this, but if you, I think it's moving in the direction that I've heard Hab say you'd like to see our occupancy and our ADU standards move. I think it makes sense to support.
I feel like this is something, if I were the city attorney, I'd be saying you guys gotta change your laws to conform to state law. I just don't know if I'm comfortable advising, like, if we're fully apprised of what we're advising on and all that. It's not like a policy thing we've had discussed.
Well, this is our last chance to make a recommendation for a vision.
I mean, does anyone have any proposed changes, I guess?
Move to public comment then.
Public comment, Tiffany?
Yep, we have one person online. It'd be Mark Fear.
Howdy, folks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. First of all, that was a fascinating discussion beforehand on conversion. And being on the BHP board, it was really interesting to finally see what our GSA building is going to look like, because I haven't seen it before then. So it'll be interesting to see what it actually develops. And I'm actually surprised Washington Co-housing wasn't included in this, because that was a school that was converted to residential. None of which has anything to do with what's before you. It's a no-brainer, it seems, this resolution. I would just comment that it's really nice to see the state finally follow again Boulder's lead on this, because this is something we've been working on for a while. But to me, the only reason I'm really making a comment is I'd like to see outreach to the community. There's still a lot of pushback, and I have a feeling that if a lot of people on Nextdoor knew about this hearing, they would be here making public comment against these things. But I think it's definitely the right direction, and I'd love to see the city keep track of the benefits of adding more ADUs and occupancy. And I know it's going to be a little difficult to measure that, but I think this is one of those things that people just need to see the benefits of something that they have opposed for so long. No, that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. I think we didn't include Washington School because it was done 20 years ago. We were looking for some current examples, and also that is quite wrapped up in a bigger thing of co-housing, but it's certainly well done. I enjoy living a block and a half from it.
I have a comment if the public comment is not too late to say something. No.
You're on the board, so say
Yeah. Well, I appreciated Mark's comments there, and it makes me think that I feel like I didn't come prepared to go into the weeds and make tweaks or suggestions to the ordinances, but it does remind me that I do want to be vocally supportive of this. I worked really hard personally. I know a lot of people in the city work really hard on the occupancy reforms. Julianne, that's how she got involved with housing in Boulder initially. And I'm really proud of my humble affiliation / contributions to Boulder Housing Coalition, which I think is a wonderful, beautiful organization that's increasing sharing and housing. I'm really excited for them that they don't have to reapply every year and pay $2,500 or something a year for their renewals, and that they can kind of go off and create co-housing all over the city. I think that's really awesome, and just the notion that of preferring, kind of traditional nuclear family like arrangements over everybody else in terms of who can live with who, I think is just not justifiable. And so I'm glad that our code is going to reflect that. I'm also really excited about the ADUs. I also would love to see the data on how that changes over years. I know they keep track of it, so it's not like we need some new data collection, but I'll be very eager to see that data roll in over the next 5 years to see what happens there. I've known a bunch of different people over the years who've had kind of like covert ADUs in their backyards, and maybe some of those will get brought into legal standing. Or anyways, I'm excited about both of these things. I think as an advisory board, we should be proud that our city and our state has moved in this direction, and I hope that we'll all vote in support of it.
Persuaded by public comment and by fellow board members' speech here, I'm ready to vote. Unless anyone else is.
Someone else wants to make a public comment. Do we have anyone else? No. Okay. Well, I think I'm hearing someone wants to make a motion then. Person with food in his mouth, of course.
I move we vote in support.
Does that need to be teased out at all, or that's enough of a motion?
You could say the motion that's
Where
spelled out to
the
draft
motion is
language,
spelled out in the
staff memo.
staff memo.
Okay, a second? All in favor?
By the way, there are two of them. So there's one for the ADUs and there's one for the
Oh, okay.
occupancy.
Yeah, let's do them piece by piece. So I vote, we vote, so I move we vote in support of the staff recommendations in the memo in regards to ADUs.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. And now we need a separate motion for occupancy.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we support and vote in favor of the one about occupancy as detailed in the step.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-7, I think. Did you raise your hand, Chip?
Yes.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you all for your careful attention to that issue. And we're excited to see the changes ahead. We have two more things to consider. Their decisions, not recommendations. The next one is item C in the agenda. And this is something that Chip has suggested and we followed up with by drafting some language. I think everyone heartily agreed with this idea that CAB should be more present at City Council by making a quarterly report out just on what we've been doing, what we're thinking about, irrespective of recommendation. I think council would be interested to know about our inquiries into homeless housing solutions and office conversions, for example, even though we haven't digested all the information yet. So we already have that language and we can have a discussion about whether we'd like to adopt it and then perhaps entertain a motion to adopt.
I would like to make two edits to what was attached. One is it currently says monthly, and I think we need to change it
Oh, yeah.
to quarterly. And then I think we should, for the second chapter or the paragraph, it should say, for starters, HAB has been investigating solutions to homelessness. I think we should start with last fall, we convened a panel. And then the outside of the schedule should be second. So start with what we did, and then the second part would be the tours.
One question, we want to do this quarterly. Do we want to maybe push this out until? I'd like that it's in here. Like, I think we should discuss this at every single meeting. But do we want to kind of like talk about this and then finalize it at our, I guess, like February meeting to do it in March, you know, and then we'd like, or something like that. Like, I think we should, what's our framework for doing this moving forward? Like, we should talk about it at every meeting, you know, as a work in progress, but we want to present it to council every quarter. So when do we want to start presenting?
Kind of like March, June,
Yeah.
September, December. I think what you're saying is we could not table this, but massage it a little bit, work on it, vote on it next.
Right,
May with
finalize
changes that.
And then maybe present it at March after the February meeting, then we have 3 meetings after that to.
Yeah, and
So then when we want to edit this to include this discussion that we had today,
we probably do, but we need to be mindful of our time constraint because we are limited to
3 minutes?
2
3
minutes, I
minutes,
think,
2
right?
minutes?
Under the city charter, we have a right to the floor.
Apparently, maybe not.
We do, it's in the charter. and they can't
Clarification on
change
that, Jay.
Yeah, I think our city attorney might disagree with you on that, Jay. The city charter says we have a right to the floor. The voters, the city council wanted to change it and the voters rejected the change in the last election. So the charter stands. But
we should maybe then.
But I don't see a reason why we should exceed 3 minutes. I don't think that's a prudent use of time.
Right, and I don't see any problem with signing up to speak, just so we avoid the question altogether.
Well, and I know
Except for I
that
think it's
city
15
council doesn't,
Yeah.
for the time being, is not doing in person.
They're not, you still have to sign up to speak.
It's easy to pool minutes too, if we want 3 minutes, if two of us show up to the meeting. then we can-
I don't think, I
pool
think as an
minutes.
advisory board, the city charter expressly states that the advisory boards have a right to the floor to advise the city council.
Well, if you pull the minutes.
I don't think-
20.
I don't think
minutes.
Yes.
I don't think when the city, when an advisory board goes to advise council, I don't necessarily think that is considered public comment. It's coming from the advisory board. And that's how I would interpret the city charter, and that just makes sense from the design of the charter, that it's different from an individual member of the public. It's
We should probably alert. the
sanction.
city
Yeah, I think we
council
should.
and the Attorney that's what we're planning. to do.
But I
With all
also-
respect, I don't see a lot of point in pressing the point if we have the opportunity to make a presentation. Let's just follow whatever rules and make our presentation, full minutes, get more time.
No, what I am saying is when we agree on something to give advice, that should be given heightened attention compared to public comment.
But we're not making a recommendation, we're just reporting on what we've.
Or when we speak to them, yeah, I mean, it's sort of the power of our board, and I think the charter conflicts that, so I don't know if. I think we just need to come up with a statement and then email. Who is the version of you who does city charter meeting or city council meetings? Yeah, who's the staff lead? It's the city manager.
The metaverse.
And the city attorney are typically present at council meetings. We could probably email them ahead of time saying, we'd like to address the board, we have a prepared comment, and I'm sure they would.
Yep, Michael, what's your reluctance to doing that? I mean, if they just shoot us down and say, no, that's not possible. I mean, but to me, it just seems like if we say, hey, Chip knows the section, we'd like to address city council on a more regular basis and just see if they're like, sure.
I think,
mean, there's not
I
much
think
political
they'll
risk in
probably
that.
say yes.
So wait, I'm a little confused.
You know.
If the issue is, can we present quarterly? I think there's no objection to signing up and doing it quarterly. If the issue is how long do we have to talk? We can argue back and forth about what we should or shouldn't, but 2 minutes, we should be able to be succinct.
I agree.
And share like, hey, this is what we met. This is what we've discussed in some of our meetings. Want to just give you a brief update. And I think that will be heard better than a longer recital of what we've talked.
I have much less of a dog in this fight. I'm a short timer, but I absolutely agree with that point. I think it's absolutely inane to try to get into the face. I can tell you what the city attorney is going to say and to engender some sort of dispute over the time we're allotted for. If we say, hey, heads up, we'd just like to come every 3 minutes and just say hello, have our emissary let you know what we're talking about and where we are. And if you want to hear more from us, we'd love to speak more to you and put us on your agenda or something like that. Outside of that, I think it's absolutely inane. It's very, off the hook public comments are very discordant for very dense agendas that the city council has to go to. So that's just my opinion.
Okay.
I agree with what Karen
Somebody
says.
asked me my opinion, and I'm gonna agree with Danny Teodoro. It's not worth even the perception of picking a fight when we can get our 3 minutes through the, established process and not even worry about it.
So here's something else to think about. If what we've presented here is about 2 or 3 minutes, and we want to share information about our topic today, then maybe we say we want to report on a regular basis, and we give one presentation in February and then another one in March, because we've had 2 great meetings that we want to talk about. So
Or Karen, the thing I think if you say, if you'd like us to come more, we'd be more than happy to. We're gonna be here every 3 months. We're gonna give you a quick update. We can elaborate more on some of these things.
Yeah.
If you want, we could come back next month if you want. But, and just in terms of comedy and not comedy, just a meeting, so.
Comedy with the team.
And good relationships and effectiveness, I think that's the way to go about it.
I think one thing I'm hopeful is if someone goes and reads this or a version of this,
Yep.
they say, oh, that's really interesting. We want to know more about XYZ. That person writes it down.
Yes.
And then at the beginning of our next meeting says, this is how council reacted. And then I think that puts us in a better position. All right, let's maybe focus on this a little more because they seem to care about this issue. I mean, all we can do is advise. So what advice do they want? You know, they're more likely to listen to us.
Yeah.
So
Well,
based
they're more
on
likely to
this.
Ask our advice too, which is the end game, I think.
So based on this discussion, should we send revised edits to Jay and Michael about what we talk about and make sure that if you read it at home, it's between 2 and 3? Is it 2 minutes or 3 minutes?
It depends on the meeting and how meaty it is, that sometimes change it.
Okay, so 2 minutes.
But I don't think we have to worry. I think as long as we're not there to give a 45-minute presentation, if it's 2 or 3 minutes, I don't think we should worry about
Well,
that.
also, we're not, this brief letter or script, we're not presenting any guidelines for how we're gonna present. This is just what we're going to present.
Right,
We don't-
but
we
if
don't
this
even
is
need to
2 minutes
say
and
quarterly,
20
we can say
seconds,
periodically.
I don't think they're gonna cut us off because that's the parameter they set for public comment. If we're belaboring with a PowerPoint presentation, they might, you know, that's just my thought. It is, I view it as distinct from public comment. This is its own thing.
I think for now, we need to get the words right and then decide how we want to present it,
You know,
when we approve or disapprove.
I think this is good. I mean, I agree with the comment on court. We discussed quarterly as opposed to, I think that should be our minimum.
And I like the idea of funneling comments, perhaps through Jay to Karen and I, and we'll come up with a newer, fresher version to look at next month. Okay, so I think we're
I'm gonna defer to.
deferring this, but now I want to say cabling in sense negative. Brings us to, is everyone comfortable with moving on?
So wait, or when we edit this, are we gonna include what we talked about this time? The conversion of the office?
I think we should.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we should. Because we got a lot of good content here.
I have a logistical question. So if it's March that we want somebody to appear to speak to council, when do we need to contact council to say, hey?
You don't, but you do want to sign up.
Actually,
Yeah.
okay.
But I think that was the difference that the distinction that you were
If
making.
we agree on language at the next meeting, which would be the 4th Wednesday of February, right?
Right.
I would propose that whoever goes emails the city manager, city attorney, or whatever the email address is, and just says, the City Housing Advisory Board has voted on a statement. We'd like to, in accordance with City Charter, Section 130,
Actually,
we would
just
like
wanna
to
speak to
present it to council. Can
Actually,
you
think that's-
please fit us in?
I think it's a good idea for the one reason that we might consider doing it that way is because there's often way more commenters than they have slots for. So if we just show up as regular public for the comments, we're likely to be thrown into the lottery.
We must get a chance.
We may not get a chance to participate. So if we do this, we could still say, hey, we'd be happy to limit our comments to 2 or 3 minutes like any other public comment.
And the city charter expressly states the commission shall have the right to the floor of the council to speak on plans and expenditures proposed.
Jay, is
We're
that
not
something
a
you can help
commission.
facilitate?
I can just tell you, you'll save a lot of time if you just sign up for public comment.
Okay.
We can do both, but I do think it makes sense. No, because I went to this meeting and I'll speak about it in a second on public comment. 80 people wanted to speak and they addressed 20 questions, the county commission. So, you know, if we're investing all this time and energy and the city, the taxpayers paying for our dinner to do all this, then we should, and the charter says so, we should make sure we're heard at the city council meeting. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask.
I've spoken to the council on a number of occasions. I don't recall ever being bumped.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's very common, actually.
it is. Okay.
Is there a first, like, if we registered way in advance, then we're at the top, or it's?
It's a lottery.
But also, keep in mind, you have 2 meetings every month.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you don't get one, you can get the next one.
But I also don't think it's a good use of someone's time to sit around for 3 hours and then find out they don't get to speak. And I think in light of the language.
No, they tell you in advance.
They do.
whether or not you're gonna-
I think in light of the language in the city charter, it makes sense to reach out and say we respectfully request 3 minutes to address council in accordance with section 130.
I feel like we don't have consensus on this approach and we might want to vote on it. Maybe we want to vote on it next month. We can all think about it some more. If we're not going to do anything until March.
I move that we think about, my motion is this. Board members think about what they want to go into the statement, they email the chair, CCJ, and then we address a final statement and our approach for contacting council at the February meeting.
We even need a motion to do that. Yeah.
I'm supportive.
I think everyone can agree on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless, any objections? Okay.
For your sake, I'd
Motion,
say,
but we
give
have-
me a half page of comments. You're gonna get bombarded with comments from everybody, like no revisions, just a half page of comments.
I think we're ready to move on to another decision item, recommendation of city council regarding board appointments. There is language on this in your packet. The basic idea is, we would love council to prioritize appointing someone to fill a coming vacancy, who has experience in housing production. I feel like that's an area that we really benefited from a previous board member who was developed a lot of housing in Boulder, continues to do so, and that it's a little bit of a knowledge gap for us to know what we're talking about and the practicalities of creating and building and getting through the process, as we learned so much from tonight from a great panel. So we don't actually know who's applying, but it would be great if council would keep that in mind, making their appointments once they get through their interviews. And that closes, when do we actually find out who's applying?
As soon as I get a list from the city clerk.
Okay.
I'll share it with the rest of the board.
Any day now, or?
Yeah, I would think so, any day now. But
Applications are closed though, so soon.
Yeah, and I want to clarify that we're not,
No, is that?
it's not our place to endorse an individual. This is more like filling out the team with, you know, a shortstop, a third baseman, a second baseman, a first baseman. No, we don't
Maybe
have-
say
maybe
we
don't
want
have a-
expertise
We don't
on
have
the
a
board.
shortstop. I love baseball, I'm sorry.
Yeah. You did a good job of making that point.
Thanks so much.
But you know, that was well phrased, and that I think.
So,
think all
yeah, I
that's
guess we
great.
should take a look at the language, make sure we're comfortable with it, and see if anyone has amendments to suggest, and then we can vote on it.
I thought the letter is great. I'm happy to approve it as is.
I second.
To a vote.
Okay, maybe no other comments before we accept?
No, that was.
Okay, all in favor of approving this decision?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
So do you?
The fastest thing we've done in the last 6
So
months.
do you like, what's the process?
I would suggest Michael sends it as chair of that.
Yeah,
When you send it to city council, who do you send it to? Like what email?
The council.
City council.
City
They're the
council.
ones who make the call.
And I'll copy all of that.
I will copy all of that, that's right. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna scroll through my agenda here.
Excuse me.
Okay, that brings us up to item 6 on the agenda, matters from staff. Facing that, please pull us in.
I don't really have anything. Anything you guys curious about or want to know?
how you doing?
Keep asking.
Oh, yeah. I have that point I raised with Michael. I don't know when you want to squeeze that in.
So, you know, before we do that, I think this is Chip's opportunity to talk about the homeless forum we attended.
Yeah, so the county commissioners did a town hall on homelessness yesterday. My first observation, the only option for the public to attend was via Zoom. There was no in-person element. The 3 commissioners appeared to be at home or in they were in separate places. At the beginning of the meeting, they announced that there was like over 100 people attending. And they seemed kind of like surprised by that, like it was more than what they're used to for their typical town hall. There was no, like, the way we do these meetings where people have 3 minutes to speak, there was no option for that. They also like didn't do a great job of announcing the format. People just started like typing questions into the Q&A like on Zoom. And then they started like, they did like a little 20-minute presentation. And then they just started answering these questions. And then when people realized that was the format, there was like 80 questions typed into the Q&A.
And the attendance rose
And
during the meeting.
did you attend it as well?
And
I
the
wasn't.
Count was well over 100.
Yeah, it was a lot. So it was like, I didn't get to ask. My question was, are we supposed to type questions? And that was never answered. But eventually I realized that's how it was being addressed. So it was kind of a bit of a free for all, which just gave me thoughts on if we do a town hall or a listening session, maybe I think having the in-person element is good. Because what I really wanted to get out of this was like, what's the community's concerns about homelessness? But I did read through all the questions and a few things stood out to me about this. So the county's housing authority is really only responsible for housing outside of the city of Boulder and the city of Longmont. The city of Boulder handles its own housing. They handle unincorporated areas in East County. A large percentage of the questions had to do with homelessness in the city of Boulder. It seems like a lot of people from Boulder went to this county meeting because they had concerns about homelessness. And a common response from the county commissioners was, you need to address that with the city of Boulder. So that sort of signaled to me that the city of Boulder maybe needs to do a better job listening to the community's concerns in the city about homelessness issues. The big issue that seemed to come up a lot was Boulder Creek, and a lot of different types of concerns about the presence of tents along Boulder Creek, garbage, drug use. How do we address the presence of homelessness? A lot of people just had genuine questions about like, why can't you move people, all of that. I don't know, the commissioners offered some good insight. A lot of it again was address this with your local police department or your local elected officials. But
You are one of them.
I think that was the frustration, but I mean, they have a point. Like it is, Boulder Creek is a city of Boulder issue. The county commission doesn't have much say what's over there. They did say in the city of Boulder, there is a camping ban. It's illegal. And then the county commissioner made a comment along the lines of, there is not enough space in the Boulder County jail to house these people, or something along those lines. I don't want to quote verbatim, but to the point of, this is why we're not just arresting them and throwing them in jail. But I got the impression from this, there's a lot of people in our community who are concerned with the presence of tents and campers along the creek. I think that's probably something people live in Boulder, we understand. Boulder Creek is one of the nicest public features we have in Boulder. And I think there's a lot of people in our community who are upset. And the solution should not be to just throw these people in jail. But there needs to be some other housing solution that serves the purpose of providing housing and connecting homeless people with resources, and also removing tents and blight from a public resource that the community enjoys. I think it serves both purposes. And a comment you've given to me, Karen, is we need to narrow the issue. We can't just have a free-for-all on homelessness. And I realize this is a big issue in Boulder. Like, we love our creek and people want it clean and nice and enjoyable. We also want to see homeless people treated with compassion and given the opportunity to better themselves and be in a better position. How do we create a housing solution that serves both goals? And there's not gonna be an easy answer to that. I realize this is a very complex problem. And it's compounded by the fact that we're a very liberal community and we're also a very wealthy community. So I do think it's something that's I think there's a lot of people in our community have questions and concerns about this. I don't know if we have the answers. I don't know if the city council has the answers. But I think there is value to listening and hearing people out and understanding what are the community's concerns about this. And I think just the number of people who attended this and who had questions specific to Boulder that the county wasn't really prepared to address signified to me that the city of Boulder, through either its advisory board or the council, needs to spend more time on this issue because it is a principal concern in our community. So
I absolutely agree with that. I think in terms of having a listening session on this, I think it's going to be paramount to really, really specify the specific angle regarding homelessness that you're going to talk about. And because that was 200 people online. I mean, you could have, people out the door here because there's a lot of pent up frustration, which you saw. And I can say the one listening session that we had, 2019, or it was pre-COVID, but we had that was kind of nebulous. And it was like, what funding mechanisms can we explore for to develop affordable housing? So it was wall to wall packed, and people were complaining about how much the rent was and everything like that. Right? And it's like, how long, Jay? 4 hours, something like that. People yelling, whatever. So that's probably going to be a big challenge for the whole thing, is how to really pare it down and say, heads up, it's this issue, right? We can't, we're not talking about the Boulder Creek or whatever. We're talking about how do we deal with housing options for people who are, housing challenged or something like that.
Yeah, I appreciate the report, but I also feel like we've kind of hashed out our niche on this, which is how can we provide more housing and get people, that's how you get people off the streets, you house them in safe, humane, supportive environments. And, I've heard lots of complaints about Boulder Creek and experienced it. I think there's some other creative solutions out there that we could be talking about that are at least housing adjacent. I've started volunteering at All Roads at the day shelter. It's just really interesting to see how many people are attracted to that. I'd love to see some analysis of whether any of those folks are choosing to go there instead of go hang out by the creek. I've seen that.
yeah, I mean, my mind was thinking today when they're talking about these transitioning office buildings. It seems much more financially viable when you're doing, sort of like the Bridge House sort of thing. That's what I took away compared to a marketable unit that you would sell on the free market.
How do you
And
turn Bridge House into like, Amazon or something so they have capacity to do that?
or
on a
is
large scale?
what Bridge House, is that something that BHP could take on?
I don't know. That's a really great question.
And then it does go hand in hand with social services and policing. I don't think the solution to all the tents along the creek is at sundown Boulder Police Department going through and doing raids and rounding up people and sending them to the jail. But if there is a different procedure where we have social workers going through from Housing and Human Services and presenting people options before they get the pink slip on the tree that says you've got 72 hours before the police shows up. How can we reform this process to make sure that we're not spending valuable taxpayer dollars sending homeless people to jail, but we're also cleaning up the creek and providing people with social services. There's not an easy answer to this. I recognize that. What I'm advocating for is, I think there's a lot more I can learn and a lot more we all can learn by just listening to our community.
How do you know you
So-
put the pink slip on the right tree?
February 13th, City Council will be hearing the HHS homelessness update for the last year. So February 13th will be the day you want to tune in.
And on February 22nd, there is a TEDx event at the library about homelessness as well.
What date was that second one?
The 22nd. I think I just sent something to Jay and Michael and we can forward it to everybody.
Well, information is great. Again, I feel like we've done some fantastic investigations on homeless solutions, and I'd like to eventually get to the point where we make some recommendations that can expand those success models. I still do not feel personally qualified to weigh in on policing issues, public space. All those things are, to me, it's outside the purview of the Housing Advisory Board.
No,
So
I agree. Go ahead.
what I hear you say in a couple of different ways is we should be offering a way for people to share whatever their thoughts or concerns or whatever, and for us to be listening, right? And that goes back to the listening sessions that we've talked about. Do we do or do we not? And you're saying we need to have a specific like topic or question or something. So how can we word a question, not like, how do we solve homelessness? Because that is far too big of a topic and there's far too many things and it's not just housing, which is what I hear you saying, like we're housing. But how can we ask a question, do a listening session and ask a question that's really directly related to housing? Because there might be somebody out there that has this amazing magical solution or a solution that we're not hearing. So how can we, is it possible that we could pose a question, a topic about that that's specifically related to housing and open that up to the listening session and be able to hear people?
Yeah, and I think part of it is giving the community opportunity to interact with their government. I mean, people say this, people in Boulder are upset right now with the state of governance in America. If you just look at how this city voted in the last presidential election. And I think at a local level, if we can give the community an opportunity to speak to their elected officials somehow, that's a positive thing. I emailed the commissioners after last night's meeting. I said, I did not feel like this was a meaningful way to engage with our government, typing comments in a chat and seeing if they respond. And I think that's part of what our city should do, is at least say we're here to listen. And then at the very least, when we do our quarterly report, we say, City Council, we did this, we listened. We're not 100% sure of what recommendations we're gonna make, but these are common themes that we all agree we heard from the community when we did this. And I think there is value to that. And we can keep thinking about it. I know it might be uncomfortable, but we can also, I think, talk about ways where if someone were to show up and just go off the deep end or something, thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. We don't have to engage necessarily.
So I feel like I'm a broken record. The meeting notes from last meeting, I expressed that, I think Philip and I said, we don't want to have a study session about homelessness for two reasons. One, we've already had a learning session with the panelists that talked about solutions to homelessness that are housing related, like actual developers, projects, strategies, financing, lessons learned that have created permanent housing solutions for people who are previously homeless. And the second issue is that we are not in a position to be talking about the underlying issues of drug addiction, mental health, incarceration, encampments, what's happening. So is there an issue with homelessness in Boulder and Boulder community? Absolutely. But I don't think that we are the venue for that. And I think that if the public has concerns and issues.
It should go to the Chamber of Commerce.
And there are, like, there was just one thing that you participated in. There's another TEDx one, but I do not.
And the thing I just participated in, they said, you need to address that with the city of Boulder. That's us.
But we're the Housing Advisory Board, right? And we are going to present we can present things that we learned and recommendations related to housing, but I do not feel comfortable having a learning session or a listening session about homelessness, because I feel like it will be equally as, I don't know, frustrating, out of control, unfocused. Like, I'm not,
I think that's a real risk. Like, I completely understand where
May I
you're coming
interject?
from.
I'm sorry. I really feel like we hashed this out pretty thoroughly at the last.
Yeah,
without-
I just don't think this issue's going away, and I just, can I say one last thing, 30 seconds, and then I'll shut it on this.
Thank you.
Because I hear you. I recognize from the work that I do with eviction prevention that one of the number one things that prevents homelessness is the emergency rental assistance, money that's given to people who can't pay their rent. A large percentage of those dollars is coming from Washington, DC. That's about to stop. So we are going to see, I'm fairly certain, a lot more tents along Boulder Creek. So this issue is not going to go away. Public officials are uncomfortable dealing with it because they don't know the answer. I'm empathetic to that. We don't have the answers. We're not the police. This is not be an issue that gets solved. But I think we need to listen. That's where I stand.
Wow, it's a lot to think about. Thank you. We are going to go on to item 6, matters from staff. And AVK has thought some things since we last.
No, but I thank Tiffany because if you want to understand homelessness, definitely attend the city council meeting.
It's on my calendar.
Yeah.
say February 13th.
And what was on the 22nd?
There's a
TEDx talk.
at the library, I think it is.
I do have a question for staff related to Alpine Balsam. I think everyone has probably noticed the construction equipment and the signs and the infrastructure project being underway. It's called Upper Goose Creek mitigation, I think. And that's a very positive step. I'm very happy to see. Just curious if there's anything else you can tell us updates about actually getting housing built on that site. Like, what does that schedule look like?
Absolutely. So this month, they started actual construction on the Greenway. So that's the whole flood mitigation along Balsam. So it's basically 100 to 150 foot swath. It's going to be a bike path or a multi-use path, greenway. There's going to be a bridge, but auto bridge and then a pedestrian bridge. So everything that's going to get constructed as part of the initial infrastructure. So the infrastructure and the greenway are starting this year. The pavilion building, which is the city's new office building, which is right there, the old medical office building, will be converted. They'll take off that facade that's there now and will get completely replaced. There'll be some work done on the garage as well, because part of it needs to be separated out specifically for the Boulder Housing Partners affordable units. And then the unfortunate part is that for Boulder Housing Partners to apply for low-income housing tax credits, they have to have an approved letter of lower. Anyone know? Anyway, the floodplain has to be resolved. Basically, FEMA has to approve the design or that it was built to the design, which means that really PHP can't even start going after funding until mid-2026. So more than likely, they're not going to start construction until 2027. But in the meantime, you're going to see a lot of activity. Like I said, the greenway is going to get built. All the horizontal infrastructure will go in, as well as the pavilion building. So, the city is hoping to move all of the city staff into the new pavilion building by the end.
From everywhere, right into there?
What happens to all the buildings that are vacated?
They turn it to everybody.
I think they're.
They better.
Hey, Jay, what's happening to the buildings where the city is now, like near Mustard's Last Stand, and like those are all in floodplains, right? So do they get demolished?
You get those two buildings get demolished.
You can convert them. The house, right.
All right.
Are you gonna make a motion?
Everything's a circle.
Should we make a
They're
motion?
in the flood.
Following up, I should know this, but do we know who's gonna develop the housing and any further iteration of design, what things are gonna look like and feel like?
Yeah, all the housing is fully entitled. So
But is
the
it
housing
all
partners,
gonna be done by BHP?
BHP went through Coburn and Pete specifically.
Right.
Worked on those projects. So BHP will develop three buildings that will be permanently affordable rentals. And then the two parcels that we've talked about, one on the northwest corner, right? Closest to the park, that's 22 townhomes. That will be for sale, that will help pay for, it's the proceeds of that, the sale of that parcel will help pay for the affordable housing.
And who's developing that?
We don't know, so we're, that would likely go out like for an RFP. Or we would just put it on the market. But you want to wait until we have the full infrastructure in place, because that's gonna increase the value of the property. So it's fully entitled, they don't have to go to the city for anything except for building permits. So we're looking to get.
That's similar to the 30 Pearl model where the affordable got built first and now Work Ventures is doing, I think it's opening next month. Their market rate, which is told like more than 90% pre-leased. So it looks like that's a successful financial model. I think.
And we followed it very closely with Alpine Balsam.
Jay, can I ask you a question? Do you know, has Boulder Housing Partners ever considered getting involved with some sort of like bridge house development program, you know?
Yeah, so Lauren can tell you. So Lee Hill, it was the first permanent supportive housing project that was a PHP project. Although, you know, it's all roads that basically manages it, but they were the developer for that. So it's not uncommon, but you know, it's not easy either for BHP to take the projects up. The biggest challenge is actually providing the services in those buildings. Construction is fairly straightforward. It's like, how do you provide the long-term money needed for all those wraparound services?
And then Element has just developed two permanent supportive housing, one at Bluebird, which is at 30th and Mapleton, and one called Zinnia, which is in Longmont. And then also BHP will do some scattered site.
Yeah, I guess the
units of
distinction with the
homeless.
bridge house and that is permanent. Bridge house is not designed to be permanent. It's designed to be transitional.
Transitional, right. Yeah, BHP tends to focus on
It's
permanent.
permanent. So,
Because one of the things that happens with bridge houses, once you've gotten a job and you're a little more stable, you need to make sure that there is housing available for you to move into.
yeah,
And I don't know to what extent Bridge House facilitates that finding of housing.
So they don't necessarily facilitate it, but everybody works together to make sure that someone who's successful in Bridge House
Yeah.
can find a place to land
Good. Do they get vouchers?
if they're eligible. Well, it depends, or available.
Quick FYI for you, I think somebody's going around trying to get a referendum going on against the zoning stuff that we just talked about today, we support.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I had somebody come to me and be like, "Hey, do you want to sign this?" And I was like, wrong guy. So, but you know, it's some keep older neighborhoods or something like that. There seems to be some stuff going around. FYI.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm confident that Boulder has the red tape will, we're never gonna be Houston, Texas. I just don't think that's in the cards.
Anything else from staff that we should know about coming up?
So our next meeting, I think will be very interesting. So we'll have the residential nexus study. So basically, that will be presented to council in April. So remember that, that's potentially applying a fee for significant additions
to single family homes or, scrapes and rebuilds. So currently, that's the segment of the market that does not pay any sort of affordable housing fee. So anyway, the consultant will be here. You can ask him questions. It's actually a pretty fascinating report. It's a little dense, but it's an interesting read.
Right. Anything we'd be voting on next meeting?
No, it's not something you would vote on. Is we're gonna go to council and basically say, here's the study. Do you want us to go forward and basically bring back an ordinance posting a fee? So I mean, I guess theory would be some more time if you wanted to.
By the way, we originally planned for this meeting, but the agenda got too crowded to have the housing analysts from Dr. Cog come and present their regional housing survey, and that probably is going to wind up being built until March.
No, I think we can do it February.
Okay, well, we'll see if they're available.
Yeah.
So it probably would-
I think that's more timely.
But we pushed it off. Okay, thank you. Ready to go to meeting debrief. We had a really productive meeting. And 3 members of the public attend in person. So our open meetings are growing in popularity at an exponential rate. Thank you for attending. Public commenters.
Food was good.
Technical applications exponential.
We had an excellent panel discussion on the topic of office conversion to housing. We had some great case studies showing the challenges and the promise. We're very grateful to Holly Hendrickson of HHS for moderating that and presenting her own expertise and her report as well. We voted to recommend the council that they adopt the draft ordinance on occupancy and ADUs with no further recommendations for changes. We started to wordsmith a script for a have member update to council, which we will complete next month and decide how we want to proceed to do that. But there seem to be an agreement we want it to happen. We will make it happen. We made a recommendation to the city council regarding board appointments, emphasizing the skill set of a housing production person. If there's one who applies to be selected once they get through their interview process. We had another good discussion about how to address the homeless issue, which I totally agree with. Chip is going to become even more pressing, fortunately, in the near future. It already has. I think homelessness is up to like 22% last year, not in Boulder, but nationally. So it's not getting easier, unfortunately. The only encouraging thing is we have done some good inquiries and know there are some solutions out there. We talked a little bit about Alpine Balsam and what's happening there, what happens next. And we had full 100% attendance at our first meeting of 2025, which is an awfully good sign. So you'll get an extra cookie if there are any left. Any other thoughts?
Can I share quickly before we adjourn?
Absolutely.
Well, I just wanted to let you guys all know that I recently finished applying to grad school. Where I'm going to continue studying architecture and hopefully find some linkages between design and affordable housing on a bigger scale. But that means that I'm probably no longer going to be in Boulder coming August. So I've decided, I guess for the betterment of the board, that I would resign at the same time as Danny's seat is up in March so that you guys could get 2 seats filled in this new election. I like that you guys are being really proactive about who you might want to come on the board, and hopefully speaking with council on that to get somebody that really benefits, or 2 people that really benefit everything the board has tried to do. And yeah, I just want to let you guys know that had a really great time and learned so much, and I hope to take everything with me to a program for more school.
Well, thank you for that report. And we so appreciate it.
And where are you going?
I applied to 4 places, so I don't know yet. I'll find out in March.
Are they all out of state or?
No, so the only one that's in state is CU Denver, and I applied to Michigan, UCLA, and USC.
Okay.
Mhm.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Be
so
around
much for your
for-
service.
One more meeting or two?
Till March.
Till March, so two
So
more.
it's till
meetings.
March, you mean March too?
Yeah, right?
Get out earlier.
Thank you. I think it's-
Oh, yeah, Google the meaning of till,
It's great to have such a range of ages.
up to but not to exceed.
And experience on the board from you to me, I guess.
More lax of time.
And I really appreciate your contributions, and I think you're making a good decision for the betterment, for the best efficiency of the board as well, and I appreciate that very much. Probably not an easy thing to do, but put in some time here and made some contributions. I think probably learned some things that will help you in the long run as well, so thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah.
It looks really badass on my applications.
It's great working with you, and I think it's really cool to, that timing's really cool, so excited for you,
Thank you.
enjoy.
Thank you.
Not, during school. We'll see that after.
We'll get to. Really good outcome for everybody, I think. Thank you.
Thanks, so too.
So maybe we might change the letter now.
Calendar check, next meeting is February
Did you hear it?
26th.
Did you hear it?
The cool thing is that it's not a leap year, so the meeting after that is March 26th, easy to remember. We do need, I would love to see if someone wanted to sit down with, maybe with me or Karen, to hammer out a recommendation or two based on what we learned from our panel tonight. Any volunteers? Any?
Yeah. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, call me. You might want to change the letter. All kidding aside, if you have two slots, think about if there's
Oh.
any other fields you want to throw in there.
I suppose I can add a note to the letter saying, by the way, we have two spots.
I thought it said one or two.
It did.
Okay.
I was the impression.
I think they'll figure it out, but.
Can I ask a quick procedural question? If I have a suggestion for agenda item, do I just email you directly before the next meeting or?
Yeah, sure. For your information, Jay and Karen and I meet monthly to hammer out the agenda. And when is that next meeting?
It's 2 weeks before the meeting, 2 weeks after this meeting.
So if
about
we
halfway
did that
between.
sooner rather than later, better chance of getting on the agenda.
Do you want to mention it now or no? Like what
Uh,
your topic is?
I just keep circling back on the need for sharing housing. And I did an interview, speaking of my podcast, an interview with a woman named Anna Marie Pluhar, who runs an organization called Sharing Housing. And I just think to just have a focused segment on what that means for the community and how we might think about promoting that would be like, like this whole conversation started off kind of with the like, well, it's going to be hard. Just so you know, before you get excited, it's going to be really hard. Sharing housing is also something that's hard, but for a whole bunch of different reasons. But from the perspective of legal and regulatory and expenses and finance, it's all easy. It's all the hard part is social. And if we could kind of open up people's brains and imagination around how we have so much housing that sits empty.
A lot of bedrooms that are empty?
Yeah, a lot of bedrooms we have so many bedrooms that are empty.
You've brought this up, you brought up the, and I am curious, like, what you're saying makes sense, for like what government, like the change on occupancy limits, big
Yeah.
part. That
Oh, so
box is
that's
now been
right. So there's like occupancy reform. I think now we need to like flip that on its head and think about vacancy reform. And so I mean, I guess my ask is not to like, let me explain it right now.
Yeah.
I'd like to have like a little longer segment to
So you think there's like a next step beyond occupancy reform to make recommendation? Okay.
So one of the things that I like about some of the recent meetings that we've had is that we get a panel discussion with different voices and opinions.
Yeah.
And so if this Anna Marie is one person and one voice, are there other people and other voices that you
Absolutely.
can recruit to?
Yeah. So yeah, I could probably put a panel together on that. Yeah, Sarah Wells is someone that comes to mind, someone that, I don't know who, well, she's on the board of BHC, that we could consider someone else from BHC to represent.
You know, what-
She can represent her.
have you heard of the organization Silver Nest? I had some friends in law school. There's older people who they don't need like a caretaker, but they want someone younger in their home in case they fall or whatever. And it's like a mutual relationship where this older person owns a home. And then there's some CU grad student who needs a cheap place to live, and they sort of can offer them below market rent, the understanding of, hey, maybe you'll pick up groceries once a week for me or something. And I know there's Silver Nest is like a web, I think that's what it's called.
It's a local.
It's like a website or something, but I don't know if that's just an idea that comes to mind. And I always thought it was a brilliant idea.
Cool. Well, let's put it on the agenda. I'm fine with that for February meeting. I just want to report on something else quickly before we move to adjourn. Just flip this article, send it around. New York City is actually going through some major housing rezoning now, and it's surprisingly similar to Boulder. Their previous focus has been on getting an exaction of a percentage of affordable housing, a very large building with the high rises going up along the waterfront in Brooklyn. And they're shifting focus to more of a general infill approach of like, hey, I mean, there's a surprising number of single family homes in New York if you're not in Midtown Manhattan. You can build an 800 square foot ADU in your backyard, more of a lot splitting approach. And they're also looking at incentives for office conversions with a big goal of 500,000 new homes. So anyway, just interesting. I'll pass it around. I think this is a national movement, really. It's happening in a lot of communities. It's just so interesting to see New York thinking, we don't always have to think big. We can think small, incremental, driven by individual homeowners and property owners. It can happen in an organic way. It's a great experiment.
So, the woman, the professor from George Washington spoke to us.
A while ago.
A year or two ago. She was talking about the duplexes where there are single families and duplex use by right.
Right.
That was the New York City area. It was New York area.
Such not.
Yeah.
Eric Adams calls it the city of yes. So with that, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor? Motion passes 7-0.
It's still like a formal definition of fill.
Good night, folks. Great meeting.
So maybe